posted on the bulletin board of the municipal building. Take roll call, Mr. Ross.
Here.
Mr. Gray.
Here.
Mr. Zenovich. Here. Mr. Fitzgerald.
Here.
Mr. Malango.
Here.
Ms. Deeds.
Here.
Mr. Almeida.
Present.
And Mr. Drews, Mr. Palmisano, and Mr. Lisco are absent.
I'm impressed you got Trezevich correct. I'm still working on it. Okay, please rise for the pledge. Many flags. All right, Chuck. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Our attorney is on his way, but we felt that we would not want to delay the meeting any further, so we feel quite comfortable in conducting this until he gets here, which should be momentarily. We're going to hold off on the administrative items. We're going to push them until the end so we don't hold up the members of the public. And we're going to hear the first application for 315 11th Avenue. We'll get to the other one as soon as we possibly can. Hopefully the first one will take one. Is there a problem?
Because we were here to make sure our hearings got ready in the resolution. Is that what's going to be at the end now?
We're going to push that till the end, yes. You're doing it for the approval, correct?
Yes.
Yes. I'm not sure if Mr. Kennedy has completed that yet or not. Do you know if he did?
It's on the agenda.
Oh, you have it? Okay, so he's done. Okay. We'll consider doing it in between,
Okay.
you know,
I'm
depending
sorry, I
on...
just have two little ones about coming ahead.
Understood. Okay, very good. We're a little out of sequence today.
No, that's okay.
Better get
Thank you.
moving than to have everyone wait for
Yep.
Mr. Kennedy. April and I will swear you guys in Mr. Kennedy's absence.
Yeah, so this is the application for Sue and Bill Ashnaud at 315 11th Avenue. If you could state your name. Okay, and who you are with you?
Antonio Scalise.
And Sue, you're the property owner?
Yes.
And Mr. Scalise, you're representing her as an
I'm
architect?
an architect, yes.
Can you both raise your right hand and swear to tell the truth to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Okay. And then, Mr. Scalise, if you could give the board your credentials?
Sure. I'm a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania. I've been before this board a few years ago. I'm also the chairman of the planning board in my town of West Long Meadow.
Okay, great. Just to help move things along, could you please summarize the variances that you're seeking this
Sure.
evening?
So I think what it comes down to, there are no variances from the perspective of the construction of the dwelling, but because of the number of bedrooms we have, we're required to have 3 parking spaces.
Right.
So part of the design is that we are, there was an existing single-car garage that we're now filling in
Right.
for a bedroom
Right.
on the first floor. So therefore, we need parking spaces. The only spots we have are in the front of the house, which you could see here, it's a little tight, but we were able to comply. So
Right.
I think we're coming essentially for the width of the driveway, which is 27 feet, so 3 parking spaces of 9 by 18, 9, 9, and 9. That's where we derive 27. And then there is something in here about a 16-foot curb cut where
Yeah.
12-foot is
That's
permitted.
correct.
And we're showing the 12-foot.
All right, hold on. We're summarizing what you're asking for first, and then we'll get into the details.
Sure.
On Ted's July 8th document, in the application package, he said, need half-story calculations, area at 5 foot or less must be at least 40% of the floor below.
Right.
Has that been settled, that matter?
Yes.
Because typically, when Ted writes that stuff up, I'm sorry, it says, he wrote it up on August 10th.
I believe we did summarize that, and that was previous, yes.
Okay, so we're confirming that there is no variance for the half-story,
No.
and you're compliant with 40% of the floor below.
Correct, and we went through, there was a bunch of items we went through. I think what we landed at the end was just the parking, yes.
Okay, so we've got two variances that you're asking for tonight, 27 foot wide,
Yep.
3 parking spots, and parking in front,
Yes.
3 spaces required, and 16 feet curb cut. Okay, now you get into detail.
If I could just do one thing real quick,
Sure.
just mark the exhibits.
Oh, sure,
So A1 would be the application,
okay,
A2 is the minor land use application. A3 is the architectural plans.
okay.
I don't have the exhibits in front of me, I'm not sure if the board has, was it just those three, or is there additional items?
I think that's all we presented.
Okay,
I
do you
didn't
have-
do like a rendering or anything,
Okay,
because it was.
is that the same as what's on the plan?
Yes, this
Okay.
is the same as what was.
Okay, so we don't have to mark
And I
that.
also have the green cards if you need.
Okay, yeah, I'll take those
Okay.
when you're done, whatever.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, go ahead.
So, I mean, I think in the summary of the variances, I think that's what we're asking, is that we're looking to use a material in the front as the 3 parking spaces to comply. And I think even though we didn't show it that way, I think it does make sense that we widen the curb cut to at least allow the smoothness of the transition for the parking space.
Okay, is there any other detail you'd like to present this evening?
No, I think it's straightforward. I'm happy to answer any questions if it wasn't
Okay,
complete. but it's-
we're going to open up to board questions, and if you're done.
Yeah,
summary.
absolutely.
Okay, Mr. Ambie, we'll start on your end, if you don't mind, unless you'd rather we start over here. Okay, great.
Regarding the curb cut, the existing is 12,
Yes.
and what is your intention regarding if you were granted a variance to 16 feet regarding the 2 sycamore trees and the utility pole that abuts the driveway? Have you given any consideration that, I mean, the pole potentially might impact, and then also we're dealing with, 2 trees there?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, to try to comply with the parking, the trees, we really didn't talk about it too much, to be honest, but, I mean, I think if they have to go, they have to go, but then we would then come back with we would have a landscape plan, it wouldn't be there.
You would visit with our shade tree commission. and
Sure.
advise on-
And comply, yeah, if there's something that, is it because we're taking something down, we have to put up a similar caliper?
No, I'm just concerned with, the trees are lovely, maybe they're not for the homeowner. I'm not saying that they have to stay, I just know from past experience that if you introduce the curb cut,
I gotta be honest, I think my client would be happy just to have the driveway as it is, but because of we're here, I know we're not supposed to talk about it, but if the board feels that leaving the trees is okay, then I think my client is open to that. I think the reason that the driveway's coming up is just to comply with the parking.
I'm just bringing up that I think that an additional 4 foot there of curb cut will impact, I'm assuming instead of doing 2 feet on one side and 2 feet on the other side, you would do 4 feet
If,
right on one
yeah,
side.
if the board should approve this proposal, I think we're happy to say as one of the conditions we work with the
Shade Tree
Shade Tree
Commission.
Commission, absolutely. As long as, I'm gonna say as long as it's reasonable, that they understand what we're trying to do, we're happy to talk.
I'm just stating the obvious, because they are there, when you have.
No, and it would be a shame to take them down, I agree.
Any thought, and I didn't get a good grasp there, but just for my own reference, do we know if there's a valve box in that general area that will be relocated out of the apron or?
I gotta be honest, I did not go into that depth, but I mean, I've done construction, my father was a mason, I grew up doing aprons all the time.
All right, so
A lot of times if you.
Cast iron, cast iron
Exactly,
box
you
in
put a
there.
box, right,
Just a question.
exactly, yeah.
I don't have any further questions at this time.
question would be, as opposed to, so if you're looking for a variance, is there a reason that you chose to have the 3 spots as opposed to a variance to have 2? And not have the, because you're looking at 27 feet wide, right?
I think the purpose was to comply.
Okay.
Again, I know my client is open to reducing it, if going to 2 spaces, again, if the board, and I don't wanna leave this too open-ended, right, because I know we have to be specific, but, we're happy to reduce that, the width. If 2 spaces, if the board would, as a little change, would say that it's acceptable, I think my client is okay with that. There's also, and I know parking in Belmar can be tricky sometimes, but, you know, there is, if we make it smaller, there's a possibility of getting a parking
Right, well,
space
that's
on the
one
street.
thing, so you're taking away another spot.
I know,
reserved.
it's kind of 6 1/2 dozen of the
Right,
other, so, if the board it seems to be okay with that, I think we're amenable to reducing the width to, let's say, 2 spaces. We can, you know, move it so we're not taking a tree out, of course, we're open to that.
Okay, well, I'm interested in listening to what everyone else said. I just was curious, so you were doing it just to be in compliance?
I think yes, we were trying to be in compliance. We didn't want to come with a non-compliant, because I needed to show that we could do it, right? And then, obviously, we're
Okay, that's all, thank you.
open. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so I think they have asked the questions that I would have asked, but have you considered, you know, getting closer to the property line here, reducing to 2 spaces? Because you're gonna be almost covering 3/4 of the front of the house. We
I'm
don't
sorry,
normally allow parking
say
in
that,
front of.
what was the
Have you
comment?
considered moving over to the left, closer to the property line? Down
Move to the right?
To the right, I'm sorry, to the right?
You're talking about in this area, like,
Yes.
you can see it right here?
Yes.
Again, we were trying to comply. I don't know if that creates other issues with the tree, so to say, but it's not our ideal situation, let's just say that. It's obviously not, but, you know, we pick our poison, which one are we trying to comply with or not comply with, and we wanted to comply with the edge to not create an issue there. So, of course, we can move it, but, you know, I didn't go into that.
I'm just not comfortable with 3 cars across the front of the building.
I would
You know,
prefer
myself,
that we
like-
don't do that either. Unfortunately, we're up against it, so I mean, I think,
Well, I see you have that little cutout, the 9.3
yeah,
there. I think
Yes.
something that could be set up where that can go over a little bit and get 2 tandems behind each other.
yeah, I mean, I think, the way I would say it is I would, definitely make it, we can conform to a maybe 20-foot instead of 27 width. And then again, as long as it doesn't trigger a variance later, we'll coordinate with the Shade Tree Commission, and as long as 20 feet is acceptable, we'll work with that, because I know we can fit 2 parking spaces comfortably there, and reduce the width from 27 to 20.
Thank you, Mr. Kuzinich.
So the existing driveway is 32 feet long? Is that correct? Almost 33? So how many cars can you fit a tandem there?
Well, a parking space is 9 by 18, so 18 and 18 is 36. Well, okay, but if we're going by minimum, 9 by 18 is used in many, many towns. I understand it's 20 here, but if we're trying to see what we can fit, 9 by 18 works. And so that's the size, it would be 18 and 18.
So you can only fit 2 cars in the driveway from like the current garage door to the sidewalk?
Yes.
Right now?
Behind each other?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And what's proposed is 27 feet across, and that's next to the sidewalk. And then the curb cut is, you're saying you would widen
It would be to the right.
12 feet that's
Yeah,
currently there.
to the right.
That
yes.
is between the apron that's at
That-
the street.
Yeah, I
That would
believe
be-
that's to the west.
You're
yeah.
asking 16 feet.
To the west, right.
Okay. Yeah, I don't understand why you would even open the driveway to the west if you have to move the pole and the tree. It seems if anything, opening the driveway a little bit to the east would be an easier thing, because then there's only one tree to move.
It would be, I think the point is that we were now parking right in front of the front door. I think we were trying to keep it to the right, but, I understand the board's point.
Okay.
I think ideally, if we can make it narrower, would be the ideal situation, or not even have to touch it, and just leave the single that's there.
Yes.
If we get 2 spaces there, we would be okay with that. As an option, I'm just thinking about that right now.
So can I ask you a question regarding that? Is that
Yeah,
okay?
sure, yeah.
So-
You don't mind, please? Okay, sure.
So if you're saying if you leave what's there right now, you would have 2 spots?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and if you do remove trees, I know the ordinances do require that you have to replace them, the ones that are in that
Right.
sidewalk area.
And we would be,
So,
we would
if
obviously
you have to remove
comply
them.
with any ordinances,
Right.
of course, as a condition of approval.
Okay, I don't think I have any questions, additional questions.
Not yet, but you might.
Correct.
Mr. Craig?
I think I'm missing the point. You have a driveway opening, normal driveway opening, I'm assuming 10 feet currently?
Yeah, it's something
Curb cut
like
of
that.
10 feet.
Yep.
Yeah, standard, whatever's there.
That would be the normal one
Yeah.
for a single car, single driveway.
Yeah, it looks like it's even a little less than 10, but say about 10, yeah.
Let's assume, just for argument's sake, it's 10
Yes.
feet. And your problem is that you now, because of additions you're going to do, you're gonna need more parking on your property, is that what this is?
That's the variance, is right, because
You need
we,
3 parking places.
yes,
Now, I'm gonna explain to you, I understand what you're saying, I can squeeze cars into 18 feet, whatever. The ordinance is 9 feet wide and 20 feet long. So, if you don't have 40 feet, you can't put 2 cars, that doesn't count for 2 cars. So you need a parking variance.
that's what we're here for, yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
all
sir.
right.
That's correct, that's what we're after, that's what I'm getting at. If, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, if the
No, that's
board is, we're amenable to leaving the driveway as is, at least location-wise, and if the board is okay with that, we're open to that, and it doesn't.
Now, is your whole driveway paved now? I don't, it's concrete right up to the house where the garage is, which you're gonna eliminate, and you can leave that there. And you're not gonna change the pavement material or anything, just leave the concrete that's there?
Well, I mean, in the finish, I'm sorry.
No,
No, in the finishes, they may decide to replace it with a different material, but,
Okay.
I mean,
And now the driveway that goes off to the right side of that driveway, is that paved? I looked at it today, somebody had a car there and I wasn't sure. Is it paved? That's just dirt right now and you've driven on it. It's grass.
yeah, you could see, sir, the driveway is right there. I forget what the distance is, but it's just off the,
Okay, so that, you would like to pave that area where the grass is?
so what we were trying to do was comply with the ordinance. So it's possible that if we could extend it a little bit, just to make a little bit more breathing room, yes, but keep it minimal. The idea is if we don't have to touch, and we did not want to touch the curb cut, to be honest, we did not want to touch it. And I think what we were doing was coming off the curb cut, and almost creating like, some space where you could maybe angle in, or try to be minimal with what we're
It
doing.
really looked to me like you could keep the curb cut like it is. You could put pavement over to the side, because I think you're not supposed to.
That's what we did, actually. We didn't have, our drawings show not touching the curb cut, but I think that came from the engineer as part of it. That's why we're talking about it. But
Okay.
our drawing, if you
My
look,
drawing looks like 27 feet, but,
well,
He's talking about the apron.
the apron.
okay.
If you notice, there's a curve which is on the westerly side where it kind of curves out. So we were actually doing what you're saying.
So you could leave the curb cut like it is, you could pull in straight to the house where the driveway, where the garage currently is, or you could pull in and with the steering wheel, just steer
That's
around
what we
the
were
car
trying to do.
and park there.
Right,
But you
yes,
should
sir.
really pave that spot, you should,
Yes,
Okay.
we have it as paved, yes.
All right.
That's the intention.
All right, and then you can leave the phone pole right where it is. I mean, that's gonna be a nightmare.
That's why when he said it, it kind of threw me off a little bit. I
That's
don't.
the first thing close to the driveway.
Yeah, we were not trying to touch the curb cut. I think where this came up is it was written in the variance. I don't know if the engineer or somebody wrote it back to us. That's why we were talking about it today.
Okay,
That,
So you're not asking and we're not giving you permission to cut the curb.
I hear you loud and clear, and we're happy with that. We're all on the same page, sir, thank you.
I just want to be abundantly clear.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
So you're just asking for a parking variance because you'll never be able to comply with 20 feet long parking places.
Right, if you go based on the ordinance, that's
Yeah.
correct.
Now,
Yeah,
you
that's right.
could go to the west a little bit with your driveway, because you've got 4 foot 7 inches to the property line. And I think the rule is that the driveway could be within 1 foot of the property line. if I'm correct.
You're correct, Mr. Curry.
Great.
Great.
And that's okay.
Great.
Yeah, we can,
So
yes.
you could make it a little wider. if
But
you-
kind of take it away from the east side.
Take it all away.
Don't, you can take it away from the east side and put it to the west. side.
Of course.
And that might look better. Yes.
I'm with you.
It certainly would.
Okay, and that's what we're looking at. That, we don't have to give you permission for that. We have to give you
The three-
variance for parking, but
Right.
not for the driveway.
Right.
Because you're not, well, actually, we may, because the width of the driveway is.
And front yard setback probably.
It was the width of the driveway and the number of parking. I guess, well,
Okay.
width of the driveway.
Two
which is the
variances,
result.
width of the driveway and parking,
Right.
inadequate parking. That's all I need.
No more questions?
I don't think so, not right now.
That's how I get your name. Mr. Ross?
And you'll be in compliance with the coverage, the impervious?
Yeah, we're at 25% right now.
With the additions, all the additions? I mean,
well-
right now you're at 25, but once you do all the modifications.
Yes, once we do the modification, let me say it like this. Whatever modifications we do, we will make sure we're 25% or less.
Okay. 'Cause I thought that you were calculated at like 49, that's what, it says proposed 49 on this minor land.
I apologize, I'm saying the existing, I apologize.
Yeah,
You're right.
My
It's a
question is-
50% required, my apologies, and it's 49% is what we're proposing.
Okay.
It was 25% existing.
Okay, so
Yes.
by us approving you to widen your driveway, we're not gonna be going over?
No, our intention is that we're compliant in every other area of the variance, not just the part.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. And I guess it's me now. This is board questions, but I do want to just make a reference here, maybe I could turn it into a question. It's very odd that you would have to go through the trouble of putting this together to try to make 3 spots across the front of your house and a 27-foot wide opening. And it's really quite unfortunate because I think some conversation might have saved you some drawing time. But my question is, if you're amenable to keeping the driveway the way it is now, and when you get kind of towards the end, that 2 cars could park next to each other by taking 3.5 feet off the right-hand side, as Mr. Craig pointed out, you only need to leave a foot buffer to your neighbor's property line when it's a parking spot. Even though you will need you'll need a variance, you're gonna get yourself 3 spots because they're gonna be side by side, and then you'll have a 3rd spot that could fit behind, non-compliant 3rd spot, but it's a 3rd spot, right? So, for the members of the public, I just want you to see a process going on here because we're working with the applicant to try to come up with a way that you can still park 3 cars, although technically we're going to have to grant you a variance because it's not considered a spot, that one that's closer to the street, because you don't have enough length. You need 40 feet length, and you've got 32 feet length, but more than likely, I do think 2 cars could probably fit there. And then, if you don't have the 3rd car being side by side, you could always back out and go down the existing driveway. So, you'll save yourself a ton of, unfortunately, you spent some money on this, but you'll save yourself a ton of money on the modification that you're talking about here, because all you're gonna have to do is just build a little turnout, and that's typically what people are doing. It's a single driveway, and then you can park 2 cars side by side, so you're not blocking someone in.
Yeah, I mean, it's not my ideal situation to be designing a parking space where you're almost turning, 90 degrees, but I think it's a wonderful idea.
No, it's not 90 degrees, I mean, it's simply, a little more, you know, off to the side, you'll have to start it maybe a little bit sooner, but it's not gonna be 90 degrees. I mean, we see all the driveways around town. Some of us on this board have
We
driveways that-
literally have what you're saying is on our proposal.
Yeah, I mean, so the question is, are you amenable to that type of modification? Because if you are, you know, we should maybe center our conversations, and if there's additional questions based on that change, we'll ask the board and then the public if they have any more questions, but that seems to be the appropriate design.
So all we're saying that's different is these two lines are just gonna shift to the right, because we designed it exactly to do what you said. It's just that we're not 1 foot away from the.
Yeah, I mean, I just think from a design point of view, having a 27-foot wide driveway, all concrete coming up to the front of your house is just not gonna be acceptable design for the neighborhood. I mean, it's out of character, it doesn't improve the neighborhood, it's got a detrimental effect to it, and it seems like you have a better resolution here. And the easiest resolution is just grant the variance for inadequate parking.
Yes, that we want.
And make no changes. I mean,
Yes.
that's another option, which we've done in the past as well, so.
I think it's, sorry,
It depends on what you want. I mean, you,
I think we're probably parking in that location occasionally, and I agree, I think if we can leave the curb cut and that, I think it's a wonderful idea. And I think maybe there's just a little bit of pavement that's done or something, like a small modification. But I think you're right, if we can grant the parking variance, I think everything you guys are concerned about, we're on the same page on, and we'll modify
and
that.
unfortunately, more often than not, when you have these situations, people park side by side anyway, but you get a rut out of the right tire.
I know.
So if you just make it look nice and
Exactly.
finish it off,
Exactly.
and you don't have the lot coverage problem, that seems to be a better solution than paving, you know, 3/4, you know, 2/3 of your whole front yard.
We're in complete agreement.
All right, I appreciate that. The left side. Yeah, the left side, there'd be no reason to go more left, because you could take 3'7" on the right.
We need to determine what the distance is from the buffer over.
Right.
It doesn't get changed.
Right, so it's only 18.5 here, if you go to the patio, so they have to stop sooner.
You have a 1 foot buffer.
Yeah, no, you're right. No, you're right. Let me see. I got a picture of this.
Right now, it looks like if I just go to the center of,
How far,
The
the front steps
driveway.
are gonna remain where they are? Sorry? The front steps are gonna remain where they are. The front
pretty
steps.
close, yes. No, actually, the entrance is gonna be in the same spot, we're eliminating the steps in our design, but the entrance is in the same area, but the steps are gone. We're creating a flush condition. That
Mr.
was,
Longo's question is, we understand that you could take 3 feet 7 inches off the right-hand side when you pull into the existing driveway and then get off to the right. Are you looking to add more to the left as well?
if I could simplify this, I think it'll help. If you look at our existing driveway line, which you could see here, it's slightly curved.
Yeah,
I think we're gonna say that we're not touching that edge. Let's say that edge stays as is, or maybe it's slightly,
the left edge.
yeah, the left edge, maybe it's a foot, or it stays very
Yep,
close.
okay, so you got your question?
Exactly.
Okay. Any more questions from the board with the changes that we just discussed that we had? Okay, we open up for public questions. No one from the public, so we'll close the public session and open it up for board comments. Mr. Elman.
I think the board's consensus and your consensus seems to be better. I will advise, I have a sweeping driveway, it does get a little difficult sometimes, and it's a learning curve, no pun intended, but I think aesthetically, the plans are beautiful. I hate to see you have a car right in front of your house. So I think with the appropriate modifications to the driveway, give consideration if your neighbor has a fence that comes all the way up, that's correct. Right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
On the
door
right.
swing.
To the right.
Just keep in mind passenger door swing.
That's why I don't wanna be 1 foot away from the property
So,
line. I appreciate it. Oh, yes. Thank you.
Ms. Deeds?
No, I agree, and I think that, in addition to doing that, not having that, widening the curb is, because then you'll have your existing parking, whatever that is now, so I think that's a benefit to the, community as well, so.
Great. Ms. Milano?
Yes, in agreement with the board comments, I would be in favor of the application.
Ms. Zulish?
I'm also very relieved with the modification that you discussed, so I think it's important.
Mr. Craig?
Yeah, I think I understand it now. To the east, the driveway may widen a foot, to the right, it could go within a foot of the property line, keeping the curb cut where it is on the neighborhood.
Yes, sir.
And all going to work.
Thank you.
Mr. Ross?
I'm in favor.
Okay, just to clarify though, how far into the existing driveway would you begin to move to the right? It's not going to be, you know, the entire length, correct? It would be, you know, just enough to clear the car that's in front of you and to park side by side.
Yeah, I think,
I mean, we're not approving you know, paving all the way up to the sidewalk is what I'm saying.
no, I don't think we want to do that.
Okay.
No, correct. I think, I don't know if it's possible that, should the board approve this as a condition, we can show it to the zoning officer, but I think the best way to handle the driveway is to give them a little bit more breathing room on the east side,
And make a shoulder on the right.
and then make, right. And I don't think we have to, I mean,
I'm sorry, so again, more breathing room on the
Left
side,
left,
the
and then
east side,
easy
yes.
side,
which is maybe a foot or so, you know,
Right.
something to that effect.
and then what was the other?
And then on the right side is where we would do the shoulder, or it kind of curves in a, I don't know what the correct term is.
Tapers?
Yeah, that's a good one. Tapers over and up, but the idea is for it not to go all the way to the, we don't want to make we're trying to keep the driveway narrow, right? And it tapers out a little bit towards the back.
I think we saved you some money tonight, and I think it's a better design, so I would be in favor of this application.
If I could use it just a little bit more.
Sure. We didn't close board comment yet.
I'm looking at the existing plan, and it looks to me like where the curb cut is on the west side, the right side, west side, you would need to, from the curb to the sidewalk, seems to me you'd have to pave just a little bit of that in order for a car to conveniently get in there. Otherwise, you're gonna be driving over the edge of the grass a little bit. It's cut like this, and it has to be cut like that.
I think there would be some modifications, but not anything major.
I just want to be sure, you're gonna have another triangle paved out there, which it looks to me like it almost has to be. But you're not changing the curb cut, that's all.
No.
Okay. I'm good with it.
Okay, great. Mr. Kennedy, I know, welcome, Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, sorry I'm late, and thank you for my co-counsel here. It's nice to know.
We might have decided.
Absolutely. I was texting her not to get too comfortable.
I'm trying to save some money, so.
But Mr. Chairman, I wrote some conditions down, as did my co-counsel here. So I think obviously, the conditions, and we had a number of them, and they changed a little bit, so we'll just, throughout the hearing, compliance with the promises, commitments, and representations that were made throughout the public hearing process, all our standard conditions, compliance with the Shade Tree Commission, if any trees have to be, working with the Shade Tree Commission, if any trees have to be relocated. And then we're saying reduce the driveway width to 20 feet as opposed to 27 feet. Is that correct?
Let's go with that right now,
Okay.
yes.
Obviously obtaining outside approvals and tree replacement.
There's no more tree replacement based on the modification.
Yeah, they're not happy about that.
The tree was in the island between the sidewalk
Okay.
and the curb. And
So
since
no
they're
reason
not
to work with the
modifying
Shade Tree
pavement,
Commission?
There's no more tree involvement, so you can strike any.
Okay. So like striking out. And we had, all right, so we do need a parking variance, 3 spaces technically required and 2 spaces technically proposed.
Yes.
Okay. Now.
The board recognizes that there's a third spot, but it's not considered a legal spot, so.
So So one of your findings is presumably gonna be, you
That-
recognize that there's a functional spot there, even though not
It
technically.
doesn't meet the definition of a compliance spot.
And I know I got here late for this, but just one, the garage is not to be used as living space, correct?
It is, converting the garage, which is creating the parking problem.
Okay, and what about, all right, was there a discussion about leaving the phone pole where it is?
It's staying because they're not changing the curb cut.
Okay, so it's not a condition, it's just, that's a
No
testimony.
longer.
And we're saying there's no curb cut variance, gonna comply. And now, we're gonna cut to this in a minute, we had relocating, the driveway, we'll come back to that. Compliance with the, coverage requirements. And, all right, so we're gonna keep the driveway, well, we're gonna let's see, we have a better explanation later on. The, left side of the driveway edge is gonna stay where it is, it's not to be relocated. And then,
He might, as he mentioned, he might try to get a foot on the left-hand side, so I don't want it to reflect that it would stay as is.
Okay.
He's looking at trying to squeeze an additional foot or so.
okay, so that's where we say, shifting it to the right just enough to
To
clear.
the left. The left would be 1 foot and the right could be up to 3 feet 7 inches.
Okay, so I said, more, on the left east side, about 1 foot,
The left side would be approximately 1 foot.
and then the right
And the right side could be a maximum of 3 feet 7 inches.
/ western side, a maximum of 3 feet, 7 inches, and that's what we talked about, the shoulder and tapering. And then, let's see, we may, to Mr. Gregg's point, we may make that minor modification, that additional triangle. Now, last question, Mr. Chairman, is there any reason that, the resolution will be adopted at the next meeting? Is there any reason you want, Mr. Solis to try to get the revised plans in, and you can see them, and at the next meeting, they don't have to come, but at the meeting, you'll see them?
I do believe a basic drawing of what's proposed should be shown prior to us
So that would
signing
give, when
off
they
on
adopt the
on-
resolution, everyone can just see it, so that.
I think Ted's probably the most important person that would want to see that, so Ted would have to see it and then tell us that he's okay with, what was shown. And him not here tonight, he can't, like, there might be something that he might
Right.
have an issue with, so Ted has to see the drawing.
Okay.
And then tell us at the next meeting that he was satisfied with it.
So the earlier you can get it into Ted and give him more time to review, that'll.
That's a real easy change, but Mr. Chairman, just to be clear, from a variance perspective, the only issue is the number of parking spaces, right? So if the board should approve this and they're allowing us to stick with 2, whatever changes happen, that's what the engineer, I'm assuming we're talking about, it's not gonna trigger another variance later.
Let's make sure.
Still the width.
The driveway width, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Ted is gonna say you don't have what is 18 feet?
Then the width, maximum width is 10 feet.
But there's no garage there anymore, does that trigger another variance because you've got a driveway pulling up to a building with no garage?
You can have a driveway without a garage.
No, I mean, it was pulling up to the front of the building, but it's like on the front lawn, actually.
You know, my concern was the front yard setback, like Ted might look, if Ted were here, like he might say, you gotta add front yard setback on this as well, possibly, I don't know.
We'll confirm that with
Yeah.
Ted.
It's on the plans, it says, that one of the variance requested was parking in the front yard. So in a sense, they're really doing that, because there's no garage there anymore.
The house
Right, but
doesn't,
we have that new ordinance.
yeah, the house doesn't allow for a driveway except for in the front.
And we have that new ordinance. too.
Right.
And then the ordinance says,
That you can park in the front yard and it's a legal parking
So that's
area.
a legal space.
So, understood. This is, if you did nothing, right, we would say, our variance would be, you have 1 legal spot now where 3 are required, right? We figured out a way to get you 2 spots, but technically, it may not comply based on the 9 by 20 rule, is that correct?
Two spots.
The 2 spots comply, but the third doesn't. So we got you an extra spot, but if they did nothing, if we approved, we would have to approve 3 require, only 1 provided, and then they would not have to make any changes at all. That would be your drop back position if Ted objects to the new plan where we got you 2 spots side by side and we know there's really 3. If Ted objects, then I think what you should ask for, what we should be approving right now is 3 required, only 1
Yes, that makes sense, Mr. Chairman.
accounted for, even though we know there are 2, because you could go side by side, but to alleviate the parking stress in town, we're trying to allow you to park side by side and 1 behind to get you 3 spots. So I think we should approve 3 required, only 1 provided. Unless anyone on the board has an objection to that, then that will be your drop back position if Ted disagrees with the side by side. So we wouldn't want you to come back and have to ask for another variance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that does cover, because the curb cut was one that was added here, I don't know, not by us, but it was added, and the parking
Okay.
space. So
All
I
right.
think you're right. I think that
Okay,
makes
so
sense.
Mr. Kennedy, anything else that you have to say?
No, I think that was it, sir.
Okay.
We have a motion to approve the application.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Griggs?
Yes.
Mr. Zenovich?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mr. Malenko?
Yes.
Ms. Dees?
Yes.
Mr. Almeida?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for the conversation. We appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
before we move on, we forgot one thing, to announce the 2 applications that are being carried.
You're good now. Okay?
All right, sure.
Hold on, Mr. Kennedy, if you wouldn't mind, before you got here, we said we would move the administrative to the end. However, one of the people we approved last week has a child care situation.
Oh.
I'm sorry, which,
We're 20119.
20119 has a child care situation, so we were wondering if we could just take care of that one and then table the rest so we don't hold it to the public.
Sure. Right now?
If you're ready.
Okay, so that was a resolution of Sweeney and Kazemi, 201 19th Avenue. That was an application, variances associated with a request to construct an addition. The only thing that I wanted to point out here, I spoke with the applicant's architect today, just to clarify, one of the variances that we needed in this particular application was attic roof rafter details, and the prevailing regulations require the wall to be a maximum of 3 feet, whereas the applicant proposes a wall height of 7 feet / 8 feet in the area of the stairwell. And I'll come back to that in a moment, but we've never really used that one, at least in my recollection before. And the conditions of note included the following. There were a couple of them. 1, revise the plan so as to confirm that the fence shall have a minimum 4-foot setback from the sidewalk. Confirm that the driveway shall be 18 feet wide by 20 feet deep. And no further expansion or intensification of the 3rd floor, and no increase in the living space on the 3rd floor absent further informal approval of the zoning board. Mr. Chairman, I think this is one that you wanted. The applicant specified that they are proposing a 1st floor elevation of only 10.4 feet. The board members and the board representative expressed concerns with the same and suggested on the record that the applicants more formally review the matter with their legal, engineering, and building representatives. Board members cautioned that such an elevation could lead to several flood-related problems with flood insurance premium issues and other real-world practical issues. The applicants agreed to release, defend, and hold the borough of the Belmar zoning board and the borough of Belmar and their agents, representatives, employees, professionals harmless from and against any and all losses and damages, liabilities associated with that elevation. And then I think we also had, per the testimony presented, in the event the home is elevated, then in that event the roof line shall be adjusted so as to confirm that the structure shall not exceed the maximum permitted height as allowed under the zoning regulations, and also needs to be reviewed and approved by the borough's flood plan administrator. But there were a couple of unique conditions there, so I just wanted to go over them. Does that sort of sound?
No, that sounds great. what's the lag on the floodplain administrator reviewing this and just making sure that there's not something here that we may have missed that she may not?
She's already been in contact with the floodplain administrator, and
Okay.
we've been talking on it.
Okay, I'm sorry, we not to swear you back in, but,
So you know,
you said a comment, you what?
we have to lift.
You have to lift, she advised you. Okay, that was my concern last month, and I'm not glad that you have to lift, but I'm glad that you're finding out now, rather than do the work and then find out later that you should have lifted, right? That would have been a much bigger issue.
Yeah,
It's the right thing to do.
yeah, I mean.
It's gonna save you on flood insurance.
The problem is we can only lift 8 inches, so I'm not sure it's gonna, and it actually won't cheapen our flood insurance. We talked to our broker, but it is what it is. The law from New Jersey requires us to be a foot above FEMA. That's a New Jersey requirement, not a Belmar. And so, because we're 10-4, we have to be over 11 foot.
I don't want to delay us approving a resolution. However, there are some recent changes that have taken place, given more leeway in terms of how high you can go. So I would assume the floodplain administrator is up on that,
Yeah,
but I think you might have the ability to go more than just 8 inches, but I'm not the expert on that. So you might want to revisit that, given a law that either, do you know about this, Kevin?
No, not enough to, but, who's our floodplain administrator?
Christine Bell.
Christine Powell, she'll know.
yeah, we've talked to her multiple
I
times.
mean, it would be a damn shame if they are only allowed to go 8 inches when going, let's say, 20 inches would give them more clearance and a better.
Right, and I know Christine informed the applicant that, the only alternative would be to ask for the variance.
Height variance?
No, variance to not have to lift.
No.
Which
Well, I see what you're saying, and I'll talk to Christine about it. If there's a way we can height more because we can
If you
continue.
don't have a
Right.
problem on the peak of your house,
Right.
you could lift all the way up. I don't understand why
So-
someone would say you'd have to stop at 8 inches. It makes no sense.
Let us double check and look into that, but from what I talked to the architect about, the higher we go, the more our roof is gonna have to pitch, and we're gonna lose more square footage in the third floor. And it starts to get
All right,
significant. Yeah,
I don't want to get in the middle
No,
of
no,
it,
no,
but
we are talking
I
to Christine, but I
want to make sure
appreciate-
that you're being told accurate information, and
Yeah.
it doesn't sound like limited to 8 inches unless that creates your other
yeah,
issues
we'll
with the
double check.
architect.
But I appreciate that you guys brought it up, it was
Okay,
the first
all
we've heard of it.
Okay, great, okay.
So if that's acceptable, we can adopt this resolution if the board is so inclined.
Just want to make sure that we're not missing variances that she should have had.
Is there an issue that the peak is gonna end up too high?
Well, right, we're
No,
not,
she
no, as long as right now we only move it 8 inches,
What if we
everything in
go
our plans is the
Higher
same.
than 8 inches, does the peak too high then? Is that what it is?
No, well, what we were advised by our architect is we would just have to, the grade of the roof would have to, so we would actually start to lose space because of
So
the,
the peak would be too high?
if we left the plans as is and lifted higher than the proposed, we would then be too high.
So then you would need a height variance.
It's 35 feet from the base flood elevation, so as long as the house is 35 feet, it could be sitting technically like 36 or 37 feet off the
Right.
ground, but it's really 35 feet.
Yeah, if you just move whatever we approved up to comply, you're good, right? I mean,
Okay, so that is different than what I'm hearing, so I appreciate this dialogue, and we will,
I
either
can
way,
attest,
what,
I can attest for my house, and I live not far from you.
Right.
Okay, I'm not in notification zone, but I'm very close to you, because I'm on Surf Avenue
Yeah.
between 19th and 20th.
yes,
The water came 13 feet, 2 or 4 inches, something like that.
Right.
The water came after Sandy 13 feet. So if your first floor is not 13 feet above sea level, another Sandy storm would damage it, but you're only required, I think, to go to 11 feet above sea level.
but your point is different than our conversation with my architect and builder, in the sense that we have to be 35 feet above flood level. So if we lifted it to 3 feet, we'd have a total of 38.
I think that would comply with the rules, but you have to go revisit
Yeah,
that.
we'll talk to
and-
Christine.
And make sure that
Okay.
you're getting it as high as you can
Yeah.
without creating an issue.
Yeah, either way, we'll remain in compliance, but there isn't anything else then that we need to do for you guys for what we have proposed from a variance and what we would.
So
Vote.
motion to approve.
right. I'll make the motion to approve.
Second.
Yes.
Mr. Gregg?
Yes.
Mr. Bezenovich?
Abstain.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mr. Malengo?
Yes.
Ms. Dees?
Abstain.
Mr. Almeida?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, there are going to be two adjournments tonight. The first adjournment, there is an application on the agenda, Christopher and Michelle Frank, 503.5 12th Avenue, for an addition and renovation. This is the Mr. Rubino one, correct? He asked for an adjournment, and he's going to renotice. So is there anyone here tonight on the 503.5 12th Avenue application? Okay, but that's going to be carried, do we have a date yet or no?
December 15th.
December 15th, 2022 at 6 o'clock PM, but there will be renotice, and the applicant did provide consent to extend it. So, Mr. Chairman, we just have a motion to carry that to December 15th.
I'll make that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, the next application on, down at the bottom of the agenda was Kristen C.C. Mara, 103 9th Avenue, Unit 8, and that was for an addition. The applicant's attorney is Paul Mirabelli. April and I spoke with him today. They're going to renotice that issue, and they're going to be on December 15th. They did verbally indicate that they consented to extend the time frame, and they are going to renotice. So if we could have a motion to carry the C.C. Mara application to December 15th, 2022 at 6 o'clock PM.
I'll make that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, are there people here on that? Okay.
And
He was told that he has to go for a D variance, right?
Yes.
I think he missed that.
Yes, and I think that was the specific reason that they're going to renotice and include use D variance.
Okay, so I'm not sure, just a comment from the chair, if you don't mind, Mr. Kennedy.
Sure.
And to Ms. Claudio as well. We're trying to move these applications through as quickly as possible. I know sometimes things change in the 11th hour, making it impossible, but it's unfortunate if there's people that have been waiting. So, you know, I mean, what, are people getting blocked from December and moved to January because these two are, the late cancellations is what my issue is.
Maybe only one person.
Okay, all right. I just, if it's because of something, a mistake or something, I just don't want somebody who has done it correctly to be penalized for somebody who has missed, right? So it's just unfortunate, but now December starts to become crowded, right? Because we moved to, we could have comfortably taken 4 tonight.
Not necessarily, I mean, there are 2 applications I have, it's the same developer that's doing both of them, and he would prefer not to do them on the same night, so
Okay.
I don't think there's gonna be an
Okay,
issue.
very good. And I'd like to just thank the next applicant and Mr. McGill for yielding. I know we promised you to be the first application, but I think we dispatched the first application pretty quickly, and but appreciate you yielding in favor of letting them go first. And thank you very much for that. Okay.
Okay,
With that,
so, Mr. Chair, we'll call the, and I probably will mispronounce his name, Zinab Abdulkaferova and Petras Kazamitov, 208 15th Avenue. And, Mr. Chairman, I think there's some attorneys involved on this, so after I mark everything into the record, and what I'd like to do is just take an overhaul of who's any interested participants, just have the lay of the land, and we can see if there's any conflicts or potential conflicts, if that's okay.
Okay, and if you could please, guide us relative to their ability to, and when and where they would interject
Yes.
the application procedures. I
Absolutely.
appreciate that.
And then this one, as Mr. McGill will undoubtedly tell you, at least this is one of the variances needed is the floor area ratio, so that's the use of the D variance aspect of this. And remember, that requires 5 affirmative yes votes, but we're fortunate that we have 7 people. So what we'll do is let's mark into the record what we as a board have before us. So A1 is the development application, and that's dated August 4th, 2022. And we're going to mark as A2 is the addendum to that application, which was attached. and these are all things that are in our documents. A3 is a series of photographs of the property and the neighborhood. 7 pictures. We're going to mark that all collectively A3, and momentarily Mr. McGill will tell us by whom these pictures were taken and when they were taken. A4 is a boundary topographic survey, and I'm going to have my friend with the awesome eyes tell the date of that.
March 1st, 2021.
March 1st, 2021. And then A5 is the minor land use application denial, and that's dated June 29, 2022. And A6 is the Borough of Belmar application checklist. And A7 is the Borough of Belmar minor land use zoning permit. And A8 is a variance plan prepared by KBA Engineering Services, and it's dated initially February 9, 2022, last revised July 25th, 2022. And last but not least, we have A9, and A9 is floor plans and elevations prepared by MB Hearn Architecture, LLC, and that is dated June 28, 2022, 4 sheets. I think that was it, April, right?
Yes.
All right, so now, if, George, if you could just introduce yourself, George McGill, and then I'm gonna ask the other attorneys who are present to come forward, and we'll just take care of that. Good evening, George.
Good evening, Kevin. Good evening, members of the board. My name is George McGill. I represent Zainab Alfarova and her husband, Batraz Kazanitov. They reside at 208 15th Avenue, and they're looking to build their home. So I'm going to be
Okay.
about the other attorneys.
Sure. Are there other attorneys here in the room? If we can just come forward and introduce yourselves and enter an appearance and identify whom you're representing.
My name is Roberta Burns, BURCC. I represent the adjacent property owner at 210 15th Avenue. That's the estate of Catellus. It's actually 2 estates. My office is in Point Pleasant.
Okay, and estate of Catellus, how do you spell that?
K-A-T-E-L-U-S.
K-A-T,
E.
I'm sorry, K-A.
K-A-T-E-L-U-S.
Okay, and you said there were 2 estates?
Yes, Agnes and her deceased son, and executor is Douglas on both estates, same one.
Okay, so that's, thank you.
Good evening, my name is Joseph Michelini, M-I-C-H-E-L-I-N-I.
I'm sorry, M-I-C-H.
E-L-I-N-I.
Okay.
Good Irish name.
Yes.
And I'm with O'Malley, Sarman and Michelini in Britain, New Jersey. I represent Constance and Bruce O'Leary, who reside at 214 15th, which is 3 Dorset.
Okay, thank you.
And I do have an expert, just so you know, I have an expert planner that's prepared to testify. His name is Samuel Bell.
Very good. And then, Mr. Chairman, at the last hearing when this was carried, I think Ed Liston was here. Is Ed Liston here tonight?
No, I think I'm here instead of it.
Oh, okay, very good. So, all right, so Mr. Chairman, and let me see, are there any other individuals in the room tonight who are represented by counsel? Don't see any, okay. So, Mr. Chairman, just as is always the case, we do a little bit of a...
Do they need to be sworn in?
The attorneys don't, the witnesses will.
Okay.
But we'll do
Okay,
that.
no problem.
And then I just, in terms of, so we've heard the owners and the objectors, and so hearing all those names and the attorneys, has any questions about, or any conflicts, or questions about conflicts, anything like that? Okay, none. Again, just for members of the public who are here, who might not come frequently, first of all, come frequently if you can. You get to see the awesome work that the zoning board members do, but we always take care to figure out who the clients are, who the objectors are, who the parties are, to make sure that there's any conflict, because we have to avoid them. All right, so what that's going to be have a seat, and what we'll do, Mr. Chairman, is typically, pursuant to your question, we turn it over to the applicant. The applicant has the burden of proving the case. And so they typically will have forth their witness, and then you either can ask questions as you want right away, and then open up for all the questions to the end, whatever the pleasure of the board is. I know the board has some
So we will open it up to the objecting parties
attorneys first.
prior to opening up the public questions.
That's typically the way we do it. There's no law that says it has to be done that way, but that's my experience. Is what,
Very good. Okay.
and I defer to you as, you know, as you want, to hold all questions at the end, or, all right,
Can I ask a question, Mr. Kennedy?
sure,
We have cross-examination of the experts, though, correct?
absolutely,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Appreciate that.
Okay, Mr. McGill, before we start, did we settle that discrepancy problem, or do we have that discrepancy? Settled? Okay, very good, okay, excellent. So, Mr. McGill, if you could begin by just summarizing what variances you're seeking this evening, so the board is clear on what is being asked of us to approve.
Sure. We're looking to build a home on the lot. The lot is 25 by 100, so it's a relatively small lot. We have a home designed by Mary Hearn. We're going to have side yard setback variance request at 3.08, where 5 feet is required. We have that's going to be on both sides. And we have an aggregate side yard variance request, and we're going to be obviously at 6.16. That will be our side yards. We're going to meet the rear yard, we're going to meet the height. We have a front yard variance that's really driven by the deck. The deck itself, I think you're going to hear, is in a place that it's allowed to be. The front yard variance is driven by the depth of the deck. You can have a 10-foot deck. You can extend 8 feet into the front yard. We actually have a 12-foot at one point. It's a 12-foot deck on the front. And we're set back at 17 feet, where the average is 15. So if we actually, move the house up to 15, we could actually have that deck without a variance request. But nonetheless, we're set back to move off the street a little bit. And so we're looking for that variance. Because we have a small lot, we have coverage issues. We're looking for building coverage at 50 and change, where 30 is required, and we're looking for lot coverage. We're at 56 and change, where 55 is required. We also need the floor area ratio variance. We are at approximately 100%, where 78% is permitted. So those are the variances that we're looking for. I have Mary Hearn here tonight. She designed the house. We have Joe Kashuba here. He's an engineer and planner. He'll discuss the variance relief. And I have Zainab Abdul-Kafarova with me. She's my client. Her husband, Vitraz, is here as well. I don't think he'll be testifying, but those are the people that will be testifying on behalf of this application.
Thank you, Mr. McGill. Just to summarize, the first variance is side yard setback. The second variance is front yard setback. The third is building coverage. The fourth is lot coverage, and the fifth is floor area ratio.
Yes, and I did leave out the parking. We have a parking area in the front where we are required to have 2 parking spaces. We essentially have none, but we do have a driveway and a parking area in front. I can't call it a conforming parking spot because it's not deep enough, but it will fit the average car, and we'll have Mary and Joe testify to that.
So under the current circumstance, there would be 2 required, 0 provided, and you're saying that under the new circumstance, is it still 2 required?
I was just corrected by Mary Hearn. The front yard, the parking space in the front is actually compliant.
So the new proposal, is it 2 parking spots required and only 1 provided then? So you're seeking a parking variance also?
Right.
Okay. So let's just make sure we get that straight, because this is saying 0 is existing,
0 is existing,
and then, and one gets created,
yes.
so you still come up one short, but okay, very good, okay. So 1 is proposed, not 0.
When-
Good, okay, good
When
catch.
we submitted, your rule hadn't changed yet.
Okay, good catch on that, okay. All right, great, so six variances. Very good.
Okay.
Please.
Want to swear in your witness?
Yeah, do you want to swear them all in, or?
Sure.
Chairman, can I swear them all in?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right, so let's just, I'll point, if you could just, ma'am, you could state your name and your address.
Leanna Bocafaro, 208 15th Ave, Belmar, New Jersey.
Okay, and that's Z-E-Y-N-A-B,
Yes,
and it's A-B-D-U-L-K-A-F-R, I'm sorry,
F-A,
K-A-F-A-R-O-V-A?
yes.
Okay, and, okay, Joe?
Joseph Kashuba, K-O-C-I-U-B-A, KBA Engineering Services, Manasquan, New Jersey.
And you're testifying tonight in your capacity as?
Both the professional engineer, professional planner.
Okay, and Zainab, you are the owner of the property?
Yes,
And just for the record, how long have you owned it roughly?
since February 2020.
Got it, okay?
Mary Heard, licensed architect, Belmar, New Jersey, Hearn.
Okay, and sir, you're not,
Okay.
okay, great. So if you all could just raise your right hands, please. Do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the best of your knowledge, to help you God?
Yes.
I do.
Yes,
Okay. And Mr. Chairman, given the contested nature of this with the professionals, I'm sure Mr. McGill will have the professionals recite their licenses and qualifications, and we would typically ask if any of the objecting counsel had any issues with the text qualifications.
And also, a little birdie whispered in my ear that even though you might, existing and proposed may stay the same, there's actually a 7th and 8th variance required for lot area and the lot size.
Got it. Thank you. All right.
Are we actually looking for those variances? Because they're pre-existing, this property's been developed for.
You still need it though, right? Because if you could bring it into compliance with the lot size, theoretically you could build it. So you need it now based on the changes that you're making. You just don't. It's non-compliant now, and it's going to remain non-compliant. So
I think, George, what the point is if they grant the application, they'll recognize that it's an existing condition.
but you have to, unless that was previously approved as a variance, which I don't believe was the case.
Okay, no, I was only
I
questioning.
mean, you'd have to research the history if back when it was originally built, if those variances were granted at that time on the property. We don't know, so we might as well approve them with your request denied, if approved.
Okay. Okay, so we'll just proceed then with Zainab, and
Great.
I'll just refer to you as Zainab, is that good? Okay, great. So you're the owner of the property, I think you already said that, right?
yes,
And you're married to Petras,
the trust is in it, yes.
and he's also an owner of the property, right?
Yes.
He's with us, right? He's right behind us?
Yeah.
We didn't swear you in. Okay? I'm talking to Zainab. So, what do you plan to do with this house, if you get approved?
So if I get approved, we wanna move and live year round here. We have two businesses we already brought to Belmar.
What do you do for a living?
I work for a life insurance company as of IT management, and I'm also a wellness and health coach. And that's the business that we brought here. I brought my business on the Belmar 917 Main Street. And my husband is a owns dental laboratory, and he also brought from Pennsylvania business here. We're running right now in Belmar 917 Main Street.
So you're both in the same building, right?
Yes.
You have your offices in the same building?
Yes, that is
Okay.
correct. But I still work from home with my main job, that it's a life insurance company. I'm IT management.
Okay, and did you say that you plan to live here?
I am planning to live, love to live here. Yes, Belmar is my favorite place, our favorite place.
How about your family? Can you tell us about your family?
We have 3 kids. They are amazing, of course. I work for a life insurance company. I just referred again, and I work from home. But I do wellness and health coaching, and I run the business with my husband from Belmar 970 Main Street. We bought the house back in February 2020. It has very small, and it has a construction damage and fire damage in the house.
It had that kind of damage when you bought it?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we knew that and then purchased the house. We would like to build a new house and then move and live year-round in Belmar. That's our wish. I work from home for my life insurance company, and because of the IT and then management level, I do the production support with it loud. The company requires isolated space and office because of the personal identification information that I need to specify, and it's an application read it loud vehicles.
And I think that you actually have an area in your house designated for that, is that
That is
correct?
correct. One room is closed door, yes.
And that's on the first floor?
Yes, on the first floor.
You went into some detail about the structure when you bought it, but can you give the board the layout of the present home?
It's a 2-bedroom and a small kitchen.
How many rooms do you have in it?
2 bedrooms.
And you're looking to take that down and to
We would
construct
like
a
to
new home,
build,
right?
yes, if we would like to have 3 kids. One is married, one is almost married, and one is in nursing school. We would love to have the house, and then they can come sometimes and stay with us. They're growing, and the family growing, and then having kids, and people like to have them around. And there's no space, and it's a struggle, and parking spaces, so we struggle a little bit.
And you hired Mary Hearn to design your new home, right?
Yes.
And you hired Joe Kashuba as well to help you with the
Yes.
site layout?
Yes.
Okay, and I cut you off there.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much. But, yes, amazing team. George McGill, Mary Hearn, and Joe Kashuba helping us to build the house.
Do you want to sit down? Or do you want
Yes.
to keep going?
I'm done.
Okay.
I think it comes.
Okay, all right.
Thursday.
That's all I have for Zainab. If there's any questions.
We get all their questions.
Okay. Then I would call Mary Hearn.
Good evening.
If we could, you've already been sworn, Mary, so could you give the board your qualifications?
Licensed in the state of New Jersey since
Ms. Hearn, please, let's skip this. You've appeared in front of the board more than enough, and we're trying to save time, so
Thank you.
we
And
accept
Mr.
your
Chairman, just for the record,
I don't have any objection.
Okay. And Roberta? Okay, no objection, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
So Mary, you were retained by Zainab to design the dwelling, is that right? Okay, and you did prepare plans dated, what, June 28, 2022, right?
Correct.
All right, so can you describe for us the structure that you designed?
I can. I have boards to enter into evidence.
All right, and are they the same as what's been marked in, or we need to mark these?
One is a photo board, so it's different.
Okay.
It's actually different than the photos that you have.
All right, so A10 is a photo board.
Joe, yours is going in the back.
Sure.
So the photo board has 6 photos on one side.
Do we need to mark that
Yeah, we'll mark that as A10.
physically? Okay.
And Mary, by whom were those pictures taken?
My office,
And roughly when?
the day before we met last, so 15, 16 days ago.
Okay, so then it would be your testimony that it's a pretty accurate depiction of what exists on site.
Yes.
Okay.
They also have an aerial photo of the majority of the block.
Can marked at A11?
A11, yes, sir.
Then I have a colored site plan, identical to sheet 1 of 4 that was submitted, except that now it's colored and mounted.
All right, so mark that as A12.
And then I have colored elevations on 2 sides of one board, identical to the elevations sheet 3 and 4 of 4 that were submitted, except that now they're colored and mounted.
Okay, so mark that as collectively as A13.
Okay. So I'm gonna leave that up.
Ms. Hearn, could you just pause for a second, if you don't mind? After the applicant spoke, I said the board was going to hold their questions, but if the opposing attorneys had questions, I apologize if I should have opened up for you guys. Would you like to hold your questions, or would you like to
I'd
ask?
just like to ask
Yes,
one
ma'am.
question.
The applicant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I apologize, Mary, but it was an oversight on my part. Ms. Bennett.
I'm sorry, I never pronounced that name correctly. I'm sorry. I can't say the name.
It's okay.
So you just purchased this house a little over two and a half years ago, is that correct?
Are you asking me a question?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, sorry, February 2020. Yes.
And you knew at that time that the lot was only 25 feet wide?
Probably.
Thank you.
As a follow-up, Zainab?
Yes, Zena.
Zainab, I'm sorry. Where do you live now?
I live in that house.
Okay, it sounded like you
No.
wanted to build a house and live there, but that you weren't living there. So I just want to
I have a
clarify.
Pennsylvania house.
You have a Pennsylvania house.
Here and there,
And where is the Pennsylvania house?
in Richboro, Bucks County.
Okay. So is that your primary home currently?
Yes.
Okay. And is there any reason why, from your perspective, that this house has to be 28%, or I'm sorry, about 23%, 22.8% bigger than what the ordinance allows in terms of the floor area ratio? Why does it have to be 2,500 square feet instead of, 2,500 instead of, I think it's about 1,900 and change? Why does it have to be that big?
I think that's a question for the architect. We
Well, she
see
can
that.
answer personally why she wants it that big.
Well, I guess she wants it, she wants it designed that way because she wants to.
Well, let her answer. Don't put words in her
Well,
mouth.
I don't know, do you understand the question?
I would
think
like
it's a
to know
technical.
why, George.
No, I won't answer for you, but it's a technical question. But
No, it's a
do your
personal
best, Ann.
question. She could design a house within the size of the ordinance. I'm asking her why she needs a bigger house. That's all.
So I have 3 kids.
Right?
I would like to welcome them to my house
Okay.
and to have them at least to stay with me.
Right, and my question is, why can't you build a 1,950 square foot house, whatever it has to be, with 3 bedrooms and a couple of bathrooms, instead of a 2,500 square feet house with 3 bedrooms and a couple of bathrooms? If you have an answer. If you don't have an answer, that's fine. Would you rather rely upon your architect?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that, Ms. Hearn. That was my oversight. Okay.
Would the board want either of the photo boards up there, or not necessary yet?
Unless there's something that you're pointing out relative to those photos.
Okay, we're gonna use them as part of the
Okay,
testimony at some point.
As you begin that part of the
Fair enough.
conversation, and you may see them at that time.
Very good. What was your question?
You were just marking plans at the moment. Did you marked everything? So I was just asking you to take the board through the house that you designed.
Okay. So I met with Zainab and Batras early spring, I believe. They had hired a different designer before I came on board and had a home designed that both George and Joe questioned. And then when they met with me, I questioned, and I beat them up a bit. It was more aggressive than what we're proposing tonight. And
knowing you as I do, I tried to guide them on what should be priority and what shouldn't be in terms of parking and what the front looked like. So they switched from that designer and hired me. I thank George and Joe for that. They had hoped to put 2 cars across the front of the property, and again, we're 25 feet wide, so it's a tiny, tiny lot. It's hard to design a year-round residence on the lot. We all know what the value of land is in Belmar now, and for the investment, people want to live here full-time. And the size home that is allowed on the property is too small for their family. So, and how they want to use the property. So that's a roundabout answer to the question that was just asked. I did my best to keep it as tight as possible and offer them what they are hoping to live in. I asked them to give up a parking space in the front. That may not be what the board wants, but I thought the impervious coverage and the aesthetic of not having 2 cars wide on a 25-foot wide lot was a much better plan to come to you and seek the parking variance. There are 0 parking spaces there now. And granted, we're asking for a bigger home that is there than is there now. But Zainab and Batras will live there mainly alone. Their youngest son will spend time there. Their older kids who are here will come and go. So I beat them up on 1 parking spot before we got here. So when the lot is that narrow, if you want to put 2 parking spaces in the front, and it's not very deep either, it's only 100 square feet, 100 feet deep, if you park the whole front yard, you don't even get a porch and steps. And so the door has to sit on the ground, and it's unattractive. It almost looks like a split level where the front door is low, halfway into the basement, and then step up inside. And to me, it was unwelcoming. I wanted to see steps, I wanted to see a landing, I wanted the door to be where we like it to be aesthetically. And to do that, we had to give up a parking space. We also typically don't like seeing double-wide driveways in front of homes, especially on this narrow lot. So that was my doing. They weren't happy with me, but it did help drive a lot of what we're proposing. If in the front yard, we have 1 spot, and then we have a landing and steps to come up into the house, there's no room for a porch on the front. So we have the porch on the 2nd floor, and the porch then connects to the reverse living spaces up there so that they can entertain on a porch right off of their family room, not off of bedrooms. So we have the kitchen family dining on the 2nd floor. We have Zainab's studio, her study, where she'll work, again, with all respect, if this gets approved, in the front of the home. And then her son's bedroom and a guest room, whoever's best of the kids, gets that other room downstairs. And then on the 2nd floor, it is kitchen family dining. And then on the 3rd floor, or half-story, we do meet the half-story definition, would be the master suite. So they're separate from kids, you know, when they're home. The house is approximately 1,000 square feet on the ground floor, 1,000 square feet on the 2nd floor, and 500 to 600 on the half-story. So it's still modest by the standard of home that we build today, granted on a very small lot. So I can go into the size of rooms, I can go into the number of rooms specifically if you want to follow along. On sheet 2 of 4 are the floor plans. So we know the seasonal high water table. We're able to put in a basement for storage. And then we have on the 1st floor plan, which is second from the right, and I'm referring, this wasn't marked because it's not different, to sheet 2 of 4. So there's a very small entry foyer, a study that's 11.8 by 12.6, a bedroom that's 11.4 by 10.4, a stair, a hall bath that serves that bedroom and study, and then there's a private bedroom in the back with its own bath and walk-in closet. There's an exterior shower planned on the grade level below an overhanging deck on the back. And then on the second floor, you can see it's all open floor plan, front to back, side to side. It's just dining room at the back, kitchen in the middle, and family room at the front. The family room has doors out to a balcony on the front. There's a fireplace and a deck off the back where they can keep a grill and 2 chairs. And then the half story, if you come up the stair again, and the master bedroom is on the front of the home with its own little balcony, and behind the stair is the master bath, through that the master walk-in closet. So there's a lot of nuance to ins and outs, setbacks. We have, and Joe may touch upon this, but what we hope to do was line up the porches with the existing porches on either side of us. So we're no further forward than our neighbors on either side. And we have proposed a very deep porch. Because we're so narrow, it's really their only outside porch. Typically, we get one on the first floor and then one on the second floor, and if we want, a small one on the third floor. And here we don't have one on the first floor, so we made it slightly deeper. It actually pushes our house back behind the homes on either side of us, which kind of honors their air and light and view. So in setting the house back, we need a variance for the front of the porch as a front setback, because you're allowed 8 feet forward, we're further. Now, had we pulled our house further forward 2 feet, which we would be allowed, not trigger a variance because it would meet the average, then we wouldn't be seeking that variance. But we actually pushed the foyer wall back, again, to keep it more open and airy. It gave me what I wanted looks-wise on the front. It gives me a little tower on the front for aesthetics and offers them enough foyer, and it didn't need to be bigger. So there's a nuance to the asking for the front setback, even though we could have avoided actually checking that box, but we think this is better for the neighbors and it suits us. So that's the front setback. The side setbacks are what they are. We're 3 foot 1 inch off each side. Again, the lot is 25 feet wide. It's not uncommon that boards in this town have approved the 3 foot 1 inch. We meet the building code setback requirement, in which we're then allowed limited windows on each side. If we were closer than 3 feet, then we would have no windows on either side, and that's never ideal as a designer. And if we made the house much narrower, it's at 18 foot 8 inches, or 10 inches, 18 foot 10 inches out to out. And we lose a foot for the thickness of the wall, so we're 17 foot 10 inches inside dimension, maximum width for the whole house. That's challenging. You get rooms down one side and a hallway on the floors where there are hallways. So in order to get a livable area for this family, we are at the depth that we are to get the rooms to fit. So the width is at its maximum that I think we could ask for, and the depth is driven by the demand of what rooms are needed, and none of them are overly big on the bedroom levels. We do have ample space on the second floor, but to get the bedrooms to fit, and in the half story to tuck up under the roof, the depth of the house is about as tight as I can keep it and give them what they hope to live in year round. I think if we went much smaller, it wouldn't suit them, and it most likely wouldn't suit any family of their size that would want to live here year round. My fear is you'd end up with the bungalows that are there and more likely to rent. So I think we struggle with these small, I've been in front of you on very small lots before, and we struggle with FAR, we struggle with building coverage. Often I'm here saying that coverage, but I have the lot coverage to support it. You know, we may need a little extra real estate for the footprint of the house, but we make up for it in our stormwater management. Here, we're just over on the stormwater or on the impervious coverage, but we are seeking a significant building coverage variance. And to be noted, we're asking for 50%, but existing is at 42. The little bungalow that's there is already at 42%, and 30 is allowed. So you see, when you have such a small lot, it's really hard to keep the numbers tight. I said this to this board before. I was part of the team that put together the FAR chart when it came into being, and Mayor Pringle was driving that team. And if you look at the chart, there's actually gaps in which, in the big lots, if you have a certain size lot, you can actually get less square footage than on a smaller lot, just the way it's gradiated. And then at the end, so the big lots in town really are challenged with a very small percentage of coverage, especially FAR. And then on the really tiny lots, there's the challenge again. In the middle, it seems to work. And I brought that up at the time because I've worked on big lots, on Inlet Terrace mainly, and on a lot of really small lots. And I said, you know, we stop it at 4,000 square feet, but we have a lot of lots in town that are smaller than 4,000 square feet. Why do we not jump the number again? And Mr. Primo's answer was, let him go to the board. And that's fine. So his thought was, if it made sense, the board could deal with it, they could see the benefits of the house or the detriments and approve it or not. But I have been before you seeking more floor area ratio, more building coverage before. We realize that we're a large house on a small lot, but for a lot of reasons, I think we've done the best that we can in providing the house that Zainab and Batras could live here full time. And if you'd like, I'll show you you have the elevations, but I'll show you the colored elevations. It's a gambrel roof.
And Mary, could you just hold that up to the public
Sure.
for a second, just,
Yep.
just real briefly?
There's the front and a side,
Thanks.
and the rear and a side.
And that's A13, right, Mary?
It's A13. So the hope is to build a gambrel roof, which is barn shaped, so that you get that shoulder room. I mean, we're very narrow. You get that shoulder room to be able to live in the half story. We meet the height requirement. Again, we meet the half story definition. So the volume up in this barn shape or gambrel helps afford, livable width. And then we mimic that on the sides architecturally with the skirted roof to break up the long sides. Because we only have 25 feet to work with and our house is only 18 foot 10 inches, I don't have any insets along the long dimensions on the sides to break it up. So we feel that bringing this skirted roof across, bringing the gambrel design down, it helps break up that flatness. And the same on the other side. And then I have a little tower in the front. Again, here's the front elevation, just to give it some definition. There's no floor up in that. So it's just a tall, small area for a sitting room. It's not actually walled in, it's open to the family room, but a little sitting area. So you see how that offers some relief and not just a flat front. We talk about change of plane a lot and the aesthetic value of that. Good?
Yeah.
Okay. What else?
So Mary, let's just touch on your designing experience in Belmar. How many houses do you think you've designed? Rough guess.
At least 100.
And how many on small lots?
At least 30.
Okay. Did you ever design a house and essentially replace a bungalow with a bungalow?
No.
So what generally gets designed on the smaller lots? How do you go about doing that?
Well, we know the rules, we try to abide by the setbacks as best we can, try to honor front setbacks to neighbors as best we can, and generate as small a house as we can that fits the program for the client. Because if their program isn't met, nothing will happen.
So we've touched on that. We've talked about Zainab's family, but is this house in any way unusual for a family of 5?
Not at all. It's 2,500 square feet.
And we know that every application rises and falls on its own facts. But have you designed houses that were in excess of the FAR requirements?
Yes,
In-
several times. In
And
Belmar.
you came before the board with those, right? So our house here, it meets the height requirements, right?
Yes,
And the rear yard requirements.
yes.
And I think you said that it could meet the front yard if you moved it forward.
Correct.
So that front yard, I mean, the porch, second story porch, where it's at, would stay where it is, and then we'd be conforming?
If we were to pull the foyer wall forward 2 feet, it would eliminate the variance need for the porch where it is.
Right where it,
Right
right
where it
where
is.
it's at, it could
Right.
be.
Right.
How does this design fit in with the the other designs that you've, not to use the word too many times, but the other houses that you designed in Belmar, how does this fit in with that look and that style?
So, on the 25-foot wide lot, the volume, if you're trying to maximize the height and take advantage of what you're allowed on the half-story, almost designs itself in terms of volume. How do you make it look unique enough for the family that's paying you to design a custom home and fit in with the neighborhood well is always the fun part of what I do. So, we do things like pop a little tower forward 2 feet to give some relief. Play the gambrel, play it well. Don't just put a barn shape and leave it all flat. Bring the skirted roof around and dress it up. I think it fits in well. We've done several gambrels in town on 13, on Ocean Avenue, blended in with just gables. I do an awful lot of gable roofs. You've seen, I don't always do gambrels. But on this narrow lot, it really made a lot of sense to take advantage of that shoulder room. And to point out, if for the record, we're at 49% at 5 feet and higher, 60% allowed. So that gambrel afforded us 50%. So we're not even maxed at that half story. We are still seeking, FAR and building coverage, but we haven't maximized the 60%, we're at 50% on that half story.
Do you have anything else you want to add?
Nope, I'm here for any questions.
Certainly will be.
And again, if you want to see any boards, I'm sure Joe's going to use the aerial, but if you want the photos of the neighborhood, I'm happy to offer them up.
Thank you, Ms. Hearn. We're changing the order around a little bit here because of the individual witnesses, so we're going to go with questions at this time. And I'd like the objecting attorneys to have their opportunity to speak first before the board is there.
My name is Roberta, and I'd like to ask the questions.
Please, that's what we just agreed to.
Okay, so far, so.
You know what, and you just either speak louder or speak into the mic, just so that it gets recorded. Thank you.
Tell my kids I'm allowed to voice. That's okay.
That one doesn't record, it's the ones on the table that are picking up the recording.
Okay.
So if you could just,
Okay.
please,
I'll do my
a
best.
little louder.
Okay.
Okay, so you said that the clients came to you about a year ago?
This past spring.
Okay, but they had gone somewhere else first. So, I guess it seems to me that the chronology was they purchased the house and, the property, and they pretty much went to an architect right away to build a bigger house, is that correct?
I don't know how long the lag was when they hired that first architect.
Okay. And now you said that there is no parking currently.
Correct.
Is there any curb cuts or driveway aprons anywhere on the property?
There's a half a curb cut on the west side of our property,
And then where is the other half of the curb cut?
on the westerly neighbor's property.
Okay, and is there a driveway apron in between the two curb cuts?
Driveway apron?
That's what I call it, but I don't
No,
know.
there's a sidewalk.
There's no dip where the car can.
Yeah, that's the curb cut.
Okay.
Yep.
And are you aware of whether that is used to park cars from time to time?
I am.
Yeah. And so is that curb cut going to be eliminated?
Yes.
Okay, so we're actually losing a parking space.
There's no viable parking space there.
But the people park there.
They do. They park on the grass, which isn't allowed in town.
There's a curb cut.
To a sidewalk, not a driveway.
Okay, so there's an elimination of a parking space. So if I could
There's
come
not an elimination of a parking space.
I apologize. I'll
I-
just say Roberta, because I remember
Yeah,
your first
Burrs
name,
is
but I
a
don't
crazy
remember your
name,
last name.
too.
What's that?
Burrs is a crazy name too.
Burrs, Ms. Burrs. If you please
Call me
pause for
Roberta.
a second, since this question has been raised, in addition to myself, there's another board member that has a question. Is that a shared driveway between the current homeowner and the home next door?
First of all, there's no driveway.
Okay, this
It's not
illegal
shared.
spot, it's an illegal spot, it doesn't count as a parking spot, I get it, they're parking on a lawn, although there's a curb cut, and I know how sometimes that could happen, because we had an application that was similar to this in the past, where, you know, somebody takes the sledgehammer to the curb, and all of a sudden, there's a, voila, there's an illegal parking spot that gets created. Understand all of that. Who uses that illegal parking spot today?
The neighbor to the west.
Okay, so they're parking on your property essentially, correct?
Yes.
Okay. There will be time for public questions once we open up, but I just want to understand, because this parking spot is an interesting development for us as board members. Please continue, I'll say Roberta.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add, maybe it'd be helpful, I did search the title of both properties, and there's no easement supporting any claim for a shared driveway. or shared
Understood.
acre.
Magically, a driveway, a curb cut appears, and somehow it starts getting used as a front lawn driveway, and we have many of those in Belmar.
And it's shown on the surveys that are the exhibits.
Of course, they're gonna survey what's there, whether it's legal or not is a different question, right? Just because it's on a survey doesn't mean that it's legal. Again, we went through this with a different application, but in any case, please proceed.
Okay, and Ms. Hearn, are you aware of what's directly to the west of the property adjacent to 210 15th Avenue?
What house is there?
What structures are there?
Yes.
And what are they?
There's a front bungalow and a back apartment.
Okay, and the back apartment, how close to that, how close to the property line is that?
Survey.
I'm sorry, which address are you talking about, Roberta?
208, 15th Avenue.
Got it.
No, I think we're talking about 210, right?
Yeah, no, yeah, I mean, are you talking about 210?
Oh, you're 208, 210.
Yes, okay,
Sorry.
got it, that's fine, thanks.
I think I need to defer to Joe. It looks like it's right on the property line.
Okay. And do you have any idea how old those homes are?
I think the lots I saw in the deed work was back to 1920, but those were the lots, so after that, but I would say 30s or 40s.
And so, do you mind if I get a little closer? I'm not young, and it's hard for me to see the plans. Sorry. I don't know what exhibit this is. Somebody wants to tell me.
It's not marked, it's identical to what was submitted.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
If we're going to reference this, we should mark it.
I mean, you marked it, but it doesn't have the marking on it.
We didn't mark it. It's part of the submitted plans.
Yeah, so it was part of A9,
so I didn't mark it.
So what sheet is it? If it says.
2 of 4, 2
Sheet
of
2 of
4.
4. So this is sheet 2, Roberta, of A9.
Which are the floor plans.
So you testified that this is a tiny lot, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I was just curious, I looked at some of the amenities, and they seem high-end to me, and I
What's
just...
wrong with that?
I have some questions.
They're allowed a high-end
Tiny
house.
lot, well, it is a lovely town, I mean, I live in Ocean County, but I was just curious, I noticed that the shower is 5 feet by 6 feet,
Mhm.
and it has 2 doors?
It does.
Has 2 doors. And then you have a standalone tub on top of that?
Yep.
Okay, and then the bathroom has a door to it,
Yes.
and then a separate door on the commode, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then there's this, okay, now going down, now is there an upstairs, a double set of stairs going into the half story?
You go up half the flight, hit a landing, and come back.
Oh. And now on the main floor, the second floor, whatever you want to call it, you've drawn in 6 tables in the seating area, is that correct?
No, the couches.
Okay, I have 2 couches,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and then that's a couch?
No, that's a table,
That's a
end table.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tables. No?
Yeah, little itty bitty tables.
So you have 6 tables, 2 couches,
Uh-huh.
and 1, 2, 3, 4 recliner, lounge chairs.
How many people are in your family? That's how many seats.
Okay, and then you have, the dining table is 17 feet by 10 inches.
It's 17 foot 10 inches wide.
Yeah, okay, so this is a construction tape measure, it's only 16 feet. 17 feet is quite a large.
It's the width of the house.
The dining room table is the width of the house?
The dining room is the width of the
Oh,
house.
so this 17 feet, 10 inches is not the size of the table?
It is not.
Okay, oh, I misunderstood that. Okay, and then the island is 10 feet, 4 inches by 4 feet, is that correct?
No, the island is 104 inches by 48 inches.
Yeah, so it's 4 feet wide and 104 inches long. And then you have a wine refrigerator, a bar sink.
Roberta, if I might interrupt you, we're volunteers here, okay? The whole board is a volunteer board. I think speaking about the size of the rooms is totally appropriate, but getting into the furnishings goes beyond the variance. The furnishings have nothing to do with the variance that's at hand. So if you could please focus your questions for the architect on the variances that they're requesting. And when you have those questions, please inform the board as to how you think that relates back to the variance.
Okay.
But the furnishings themselves, whether it's vacant space or couches or tables, is irrelevant to the variances that we're discussing right now.
My point is that there are a lot of amenities in a home that are being built on a tiny lot. which
Relative to the variance,
for
please
maintenance.
tell us the relevance of your comments or your questions to the variances that are being requested.
Okay, so the relevance is, there's a lot of amenities, a lot of larger items that are depicted that could be smaller to make the home smaller and not affect the adjoining property lights.
So your question, to summarize, again, for our sake and time, right, I understood that Ms. Hearn testified that it's about approximately 1,000 square feet on the first floor. You're suggesting that you don't need 1,000 square feet on the first floor.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's what we're trying to get to. And talking about couches and tables and dining room tables is wasting our time.
I understand.
Thank you, okay.
So now what is the total number of decks, porches, and balconies and landings on the home?
There's a porch, a balcony on the front of the second floor. There's a deck at the back of the second floor. And there's a balcony at the front of the half story, which is the third floor.
So are you counting this one? I count 6. 1, 2.
Well, that's an exterior shower on grade.
I counted 6.
There's not 6.
And you say there are 3?
There are. There's one on the front of the second floor.
I'm sorry, Mary, 3 what?
Balcony,
3 balconies.
there's a balcony on the front of the second floor, there's a deck on the back of the second floor, and there's a balcony on the front of the half-story.
And there's no deck or balcony back here?
Correct,
And then there's a landing, and there's no deck back here?
correct. That's grass.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Ms. Hearn, my name is Joe Nicolini. I'm an attorney for one of the neighbors. I just want to ask you some questions. The size of the home is too small for their family and how they want to use it. I wrote down what you said. That's correct?
If I made it tighter.
Okay. Now, what you said, yeah, if you made it tighter, it would be too small for
It's
their
not too
family.
small
Excuse
now.
me. Let me just, it says, right, I get that. I understand. I think we're on the same page. But you said if you made it smaller, it would be too small for their family and how they want to use it, right?
That's right.
And you also said that they live mainly there alone, but they have children that come and visit, correct? Okay, so it's mainly going to be used, it's 1,900, or it's 2,500 square feet, not including the basement, correct? Which is what,
Which
about
is
1,000?
unfinished.
I understand that, but it's, excuse me, but it's about 1,000 square feet, right?
It's about 800 square feet.
Okay, 800 square feet, and that's gonna have some stuff in it. Presumably, it's gonna have a washer or dryer. It's gonna be used, correct?
Have mechanicals.
Okay. And they could put a ping pong table down there if they wanted to. They could throw a couch down there if they wanted to. They shouldn't, but they could put a bed down there. We know that that does happen
They
occasionally.
can't put a bed down there.
I'm saying legally they can't.
Correct.
Okay. But that doesn't stop people from doing things, correct? Sometimes.
I don't think that way, but okay.
Okay. Yeah, well,
I
I'm
don't
glad
want,
that,
I
I'm
don't
glad
want
that,
any guest of mine caught
I
on
understand.
fire in the
and I'm
basement.
glad that you think that.
Right,
But other people in Belmar sometimes think differently. You can see that, correct?
absolutely.
Okay. And I'm not saying that these people do. I'm just saying that you've got this additional 800 square feet down there that somebody could use for various purposes.
That's correct.
Okay. So the house is about, what, 2,500, 2,550 square feet? How many?
25, 20, 25, 22.
And if it were to meet the FAR requirements, the floor area ratio, how big would it have to be?
I'm not sure.
I calculated, and you can tell me if you think I'm wrong, 1,950 square
I
feet.
think that's very close. That's a number Joe and I have talked about.
All right, so about 1,950 square feet. And that doesn't include the 800 square feet in the basement, correct? That floor area ratio doesn't include the basement. It doesn't include the deck, correct? It doesn't include the space in the balconies, right? So how big is the square footage of the balconies? What kind of square footage are we
The
talking
covered
about?
the front porch is 143 square feet.
I'm sorry, front porch is 140.
Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry, that's existing. I'm using Joe's plan.
Okay,
So the front second floor balcony is 208 square feet proposed.
okay, and what about the other balcony?
The rear balcony is 92 square feet.
So that's 300 square feet. And what about the deck? You said there was a deck also.
That is the deck, 92
Okay.
on that.
So then what about the third one? There was
I
two
don't-
balconies and a
That's
deck.
counted in the building coverage, but it is 10 by 70 square feet.
All right, is that counted in the floor area ratio?
No.
Okay, so we have another 370 square feet in addition to the 800 square feet in the basement. That's not going into the floor ratio, right? So they're essentially proposing to build something that's 2,500 square feet with additional usable space, not in floor area ratio, but additional usable space of 800 square feet, and additional decks and balconies of 370 square feet, right? And you think you don't think that's small, do you?
I do.
You do.
You should see what I designed.
Oh, I'm sure you designed some very nice things. Because I think that the design is nice, And that's not my client's issue. My client's issue is the size of the
I
design.
get it.
Okay.
I
So,
know.
this is too small for them and their family to use. That's
No, it's designed appropriately for
Right,
how
if
they
it,
want to use it.
right, if it was, let me rephrase, because that's my fault. If it was 950 square feet, or 1,950 square feet, which would meet the floor area ratio, and still had 800 square feet of basement, and still had 370 square feet of decks,
It would not offer them
It
what
would-
they need to live in year round.
right, and that's personal to them, right? What their need is
Yep.
what they perceive to be their need, correct?
That's right.
All right, that's not a special reason, is it?
I don't know. I'm an
Okay.
architect.
All right. And you talked, in response to Mr. McGill's questions, about other places that you've designed within Belmar that maybe exceed floor area ratio or are large structures on small lots. Remember that testimony?
Yes,
Okay, you've done that on other occasions.
several.
But you realize that under the zoning law, this application stands on its own.
Absolutely.
Okay. And you can't say because we gave a variance over
I
here.
answered a question my attorney asked
Okay.
me.
All right, he asked you a bad question, you agree to that, right?
No, I don't. He asked me a question and I answered
All
it.
right. But you understand this application stands on its own, and what was done somewhere else is not precedential. You understand
Absolutely.
that? And that's
this
the law,
shouldn't set precedent for everything moving forward.
okay? Can you build a conforming home or design a conforming home with 1,900 square feet, 1,950 square feet, together with 800 feet, or something in a basement and decks and balconies?
I did not do a study to see if I could meet setbacks and building coverage and adhere to that FAR.
I'm not asking about that. I'm asking
You asked me a conforming home.
conforming in terms of FAR. So let me
Yes.
clarify my question. You
Yes.
can design something that conforms in terms of FAR. You may still need other
Right.
variances for side yard or setback, correct?
Yes.
But you can design a home that, even if this home were not as deep, let's say, you could design a home that met the FAR.
I can.
And if you did design such a home, and let's say it didn't extend as far back, because this extends, how far from the back wall of the house to the back property line is it? How many?
25 feet.
How many?
25 feet.
Is that from the top of the back deck?
That's from the back of the house to the property line.
Okay, but it has doesn't it have a deck or a balcony in the back?
Yes.
And is it from the balusters from the deck?
No.
Oh, okay. So from the balusters on the deck, or the edge of the deck to the back property line, how far is it?
19 feet.
Right.
And that doesn't require a variance.
I'm not asking if it does. It does in the sense that you have floor area ratio and you've expanded this large house.
I could put the house back there.
Okay, I understand that. But you could also, could you do that at 1,950 square feet?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so you could design a home that would meet 1,950 square feet, and it would go all the way back like that, but you'd probably bring it in the front then, correct? You'd have to bring it in somewhere.
All parenthetical.
You'd have to bring it in
Or
somewhere
it
to
could
do
be a
it.
5-foot wide house.
Well, we know that that's not gonna happen.
And it's not what we're proposing, so
But I'm asking about what's possible,
it's possible.
because you've asked for
I
a
said yes.
variance. Okay. Now, the floor area ratio, you mentioned that you were on the committee or that developed the ordinance
That's
here,
right.
right? And as I understand that the way that works is that the larger the lot, the smaller the floor area ratio requirement is, right? So it's easier to comply with it. So what's already built into the ordinance is that as the lot gets smaller, the floor area ratio gets bigger,
Right,
right?
but it stops at 4,000 square feet.
Right.
It doesn't address a 2,500 square
Okay.
foot lot.
Right. So obviously, when the township governing body adopted this ordinance, they didn't want
That's
to,
not true,
well,
because I posed the question to them.
Right.
And it wasn't what they didn't want.
well, what did
just
they
said,
adopt?
let the merits come before the board.
Okay. So, but they adopted an ordinance that says,
Much to my
excuse me,
chagrin.
let me finish the question, please. They adopted an ordinance which specifically cut that floor area ratio off at 78%, when if you're between, I think, 5,000 and a little over 5,000 and almost 7,000, 65%, right?
I don't have it
Okay,
all.
well, I'll represent to you that between 5,051 and 6,999 square feet, or in terms of the lot, you have 65% floor area ratio. That sounds about right to you. That doesn't sound wrong, correct? And at 4,000 to 5,050, you have 75%. Okay, and then under 4,000, it's 78%. So basically, as the lot gets smaller, you're allowed to expand, right? And so it's already built into the ordinance that when you have a smaller lot, you should be able to build a bigger house in terms of floor area ratio. That is the floor area that's going to be occupied versus the lot size, correct? Okay, so that's already built in, and yet you're asking for another 23% on top of that.
Because it's unreasonable.
Well, you think it's
I
unreasonable.
do.
Now, there is a study, and I know that the applicant would like to use that study for a home office. That's the testimony that we heard. But you could build this without a study or with a smaller study, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And unfortunately, and it may not be this applicant, but let's say they sell this 10 years from now, that study has a closet, right?
Yes.
And a window, right? What's to prevent it from being used as a bedroom down the road?
Nothing.
And if it is used as a bedroom, then you have more parking requirements, right?
Correct.
And the applicant already has an office, apparently, downtown, correct?
There's a studio downtown, not an office for her insurance job.
So
So
the
that's
curb,
not where she works at
Okay.
her main job.
okay, I understand that.
Okay.
The curb cuts proposed would eliminate street parking, would it not?
Say that again?
The curb cut that's proposed for the space in the front of the house, would that eliminate street parking?
No.
It doesn't
would trade.
eliminate any?
No, it would trade.
Trade
Would
what?
shift. The spot that's there would shift.
So it would still exist, it would just be moved?
Correct.
Okay. Do you agree that it's an objective of the master plan to protect single-family residential districts from overdevelopment?
I'm gonna leave that to the planner.
Okay. Well, do you agree with that statement?
I'm
I
gonna
think-
address it, it's a planning question.
I'm asking you as an architect, do you
I
agree
don't
with this
read the
statement?
master plan.
I didn't
I read
ask you
zoning
if you did.
ordinance.
I asked you if you agree with this statement. If you don't know, that's fine, you can say I don't know.
I'm deferring to the planner.
I think she's answered the
That's
question.
why he's coming up after me.
I understand your answer, but it's, with all due respect, it's not answering the question.
And
If
I'm
you
not
don't know, you
going
can
to
say you
answer
don't
the
know.
question. I'm not going to answer the
Okay,
question.
you
There's
refuse
a
to
better
answer.
professional.
No, it's not confusing, she said she didn't read the master plan.
So
how would
she doesn't know,
How would
right?
she know what's in it?
That's
So
fine.
everyone's made their point, so why don't
you go to your next
I will, I'll go to my next question, thank you. So the building coverage in this situation is how much? What's the proposed building coverage?
Proposed is 50.4%.
50.4. And what is permitted or allowed?
30% is allowed, 42.0 exists.
Okay. And you could design something at 42.0 and just go up from the existing footprint, could you not?
Good.
Okay, and how big is the square footage of the existing footprint?
Of the house?
Yep.
Proposed building coverage of dwelling 1,053.
Right, and what's there now?
And I'm sorry, what is that, 1,053 square feet, Mary?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm
And
sorry,
that-
what is that?
That's the square footage of the footprint of the house.
Thank you.
Proposed.
Proposed,
Right, what is existing?
788.
Okay. So, let's see, if you went up 2.5 or 3 stories, whatever you want to call it. Looks like a third story, but I understand they call it a half story. But if you went up from the existing footprint, you could have a house that meets the 1,950 square foot requirement if you went up from the existing footprint, correct?
Probably.
And without increasing the depth in the backyard, right?
Yes.
What is the distance between the proposed home, and I don't know if you know this, because you didn't do the site plans, and that's fine, but between the proposed home and the neighboring homes on each side?
We have 20 scale?
10.
10? So the proposed distance between our proposed home and the home to the east is 7 feet. And the distance, let me make sure I have the right one. On the west side is 6.5 feet, almost 7 feet, 6 foot, 10 inches.
And how is that different from the existing home? In other words, what's the
Existing
distance?
home is 6 feet from the house on the east side and 7 foot, 10 inches on the west side. So it shifts, it's almost the same exact width, it shifts to the west 1 foot.
So it's 7 and 6.5 versus 6 and 7, 10, right? So that's actually an increase of about 4 inches if my math is correct.
Yeah, this calls out the house existing at 18.6 feet and we're at 18.8 feet.
And then how many inches is that? 4 inches?
0.2 feet is 3 inches.
3 inches, okay. So even though it's relatively minor, and I agree with that statement, it is existing as non-conforming and it's becoming more non-conforming,
Well,
correct?
we are continuing up, so there's, yes.
But it's more non-conforming in that you're making
No,
the house
actually-
slightly bigger.
No, because we're moving the house. You have one setback that is only 2 foot 4 inches now, and we would be making that 3 foot 1 inch.
Okay.
So you would be making that more conforming. And
Right.
on the west side, there's 4 feet where we would be making it 3 feet. So
Right,
it's a
but in the aggregate, it's less conforming. Correct?
For the total side setbacks, that's true,
Okay.
by 3 inches.
All right, and how many variances are there for setback? There's one for one side, one for the other side, because 5 feet are required, right?
Yep.
So that's one for one side is one variance, setback. One for the other side, that's a second variance, and then there's a third variance
For total.
for total. So those are 3 separate variances, are they not? And in the aggregate, you're making it
3 inches wide.
3 inches wider, not much, but on a 25-foot lot, I would argue that every inch counts.
I agree.
Okay, and would you agree then with the principle of zoning that we try not to expand nonconformities, but try to bring properties into conformance?
Again, I feel we're bringing this more into conformance because we're bringing the 2 foot, 4 inch setback to the east to 3 foot 1 inch.
Sure.
The building code wants more than 3 foot, as does every paramedic and fireman in town.
I concede that some variances would be needed to build a decent house here. That's not what I'm arguing about. What I'm saying is, you could cut down those 3 inches and make this conforming and eliminate.
Well, it would not be conforming.
In the aggregate, you would not make it more non-conforming in terms of the combined setback.
No, that's not true, because I still would have to set it 3 foot 1 inch off the easterly line.
Right, but you're making it worse by expanding the building by 3 inches.
Making
And
what
every inch
worse?
of case.
Making the total side setback.
Correct.
Yes, by
All
3
right,
inches.
that's my point, thank you. Now, the height of the building is what, 35 feet?
That's correct.
And that's the max permitted, correct?
That's correct.
So you're going all the way to the edge in that
Yes, we
regard.
are. When I have 18 foot to work with width-wise, I need the height.
And under the law, there's a lot of law that talks about how side setback variances are exacerbated by height. Are you familiar with that law? In other words,
No.
if you have a side setback variance, the impact of the height is even greater
In what body of work?
in the law. In the Dallmeyer case and other cases, it talks about that.
I don't
But
know
you
anything
need to
about
be,
that.
okay, so you didn't design this home with that case law in mind,
No,
which would indicate
I
that,
designed it with the zoning ordinance.
I understand. So let me just finish asking the questions before you answer, please. We're setting a record, right? So, just for the record, I know you already answered, but you didn't design it with the idea of the case law, which indicates that when you have small side yard setbacks, the height really matters because it's exacerbated, the height is exacerbated when things are tall and there's not much space in between them.
What's the question?
You didn't design with that case law in mind.
I did not.
Okay. Now, the deck in the front, how far out, let me just take a look at some of this, if you don't mind. What was this marked as an exhibit?
It says it right under your cup.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. A13, looking at A13, the colored version, oh, this was marked separately, okay. And A13, this little turret area out here, how far out does that stick from the wall next to it?
Hang on. 2 foot 4 inches.
All right, and on the interior, you said that's really just kind of a sitting area, right?
That's right.
That's-
It's an extension of the family room.
And that's a design issue, right? You do that for design, but that could be eliminated and actually provide more light, air, and open space to the neighbors to the west, correct?
At the detriment of the aesthetics, yes, it could.
Well, you'd still have some relief. It wouldn't be a totally flat wall because you got this roof over the
Yes, it
front
would
porch.
be exactly a flat wall if you brought
Okay.
it back to there.
Okay, but what about this balcony? The balcony's not going away, right?
No.
You have an inset area all the way up top that would still exist across the front of the house on the top,
Yeah.
correct? Okay, and that would be an architectural design that would be
It would be
pleasing.
less aesthetically pleasing if you were to push that tower back flush with the family room wall.
In your opinion?
Absolutely.
Okay, right. But that turret actually blocks light, air, and open space if the sun's
That
coming up.
turret is
Excuse
back
me, let me answer the
further
question.
than either house on either side.
Can you let me finish asking the question?
Just saying.
Please don't interrupt. Okay, it's gonna take a long time if you keep interrupting.
Okay.
Okay. So if you remove that turret's bumping out 2 feet and it's pretty high. I mean, how high is the peak of that turret?
Off of what?
From the ground level as compared with the 35-foot roof?
31 foot 6 inches.
Right, so if that's removed, it is gonna allow a significant amount of light, air, and open space when the sun comes up in the east until it gets up overhead, correct? To the neighbors to the west of it.
Well, I think if you look at the east side elevation, you see it's pretty much de minimis.
Well, it's sticking out here, right?
Yes.
Okay, and then this is protruding as well. Now, when you were measuring the front setback, how far is the house setback?
The proposed house?
The proposed house, the one that we're talking about now on A13?
17.67 feet to that front foyer and tower wall.
All right, so when we're looking at A13, is that to this
That's correct.
location?
Yes.
Okay, what is the setback to this location where you have this big deck coming out at the top here?
8
about-
feet
So it's only 8 feet from here.
to the property line.
Right, and how many feet deep is this upper deck?
It's 11 feet at the deep part, and it's 8 foot and change at the shallow part.
So that's a pretty big deck. So that's the main deck, correct?
That's correct.
And that you would expect that there would be furnishings out there, things out there.
Yes.
Okay, so that's going to provide additional view block, I would say, to the people to the west and to the east as well, if there's large items of furniture out on that deck, correct?
Yes. And it's completely conforming.
But the building itself is not, that's my
The
point. The
front
building is
wall of
not.
the house is not. It is. Front wall of the house is.
So, the building coverage calculation, does that include, does that include this area back here, this deck and this shower underneath? Is that included in building coverage or not?
No,
It is not.
it is not,
Why not?
because it's not supposed to be per our ordinance.
Because this area is not covering anything?
It's an open slat deck. It counts as impervious coverage, but it does not count as building coverage.
It doesn't count as building coverage, but it's connected to a shower underneath.
If you read the definition
I'm
of
just-
building
I'm
coverage,
just trying
it's
to
not
clarify.
included.
Okay. And what about this front?
That is.
That
It's
is.
solid, and rain can't get through it.
Oh, wait a second. Rain can't get through it. Can rain, is this gonna have a solid floor or
Open
not?
slat decking.
As a slat deck, this has a solid deck. So
Yep.
this would be like fiberglass or
Yes.
something like that.
That's correct.
And because this decking is open, it doesn't count as coverage.
Exactly right.
Mr. Bertolini, how about more than one request for a bathroom break?
Sure,
Do you know
absolutely.
how much longer you'll be? Because if it'll be short, we will let you conclude, but if not, I think now would be a good time for us to take 5 minutes, please.
I think we should take 5 minutes.
I
think that's a good
appreciate
idea.
that. I think there's a few others that might too.
Sure.
If we could reconvene at 8:30. Thank you.
For back on the record,
Okay.
take roll call again. Mr. Ross?
Here.
Mr. Gregg?
Here.
Mr. Zenovich?
Here.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Still here.
Mr. Malino?
Here.
Ms. Dees?
Here.
Mr. Alvey?
I am here. Okay, Mr. McLeany.
We're waiting for a witness, I believe.
Oh.
I can
You know what?
cross-examine
I'm
Mr.
sorry, I
McGill.
started it. I should have
Where
looked.
do you want me to
It's gonna
cross-examine you?
cross-examine the chair.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay, no problem. The only thing you missed was us telling everybody that we're still here. Okay, Mr. McLean, please
Yes.
continue.
Thank you. Ms. Hearn, you introduced as evidence A13 and A12, which were the color photos on the bottom. Actually, I'm sorry, that's not right. A11 and A10, which are the color photos on the bottom, correct?
Yes.
You're relying upon those today?
I think the planner will be.
Okay. Were they on file 10 days prior to today's hearing?
No.
Okay, so these are new. Any other, and then A13 was on file but not color-coded, that's?
Correct.
Okay. But in terms of brand-new exhibits that were not on file 10 days prior to this hearing, are we talking about, to the best of your knowledge, just A10 and A11?
Yes.
You know why they weren't put on file 10 days prior to the hearing?
Nope.
Did you take those photos or arrange for them to be made?
Yes.
You did?
Can I just ask what the relevance of the 10 days is?
I think we're entitled to 10 days' notice of any exhibit that should be on file.
No, I think that we have to have our application and our plans on file 10 days before, and that's what we have, but we're allowed to supplement the record at the hearing.
If you're relying upon it, I think it's improper to introduce new exhibits that we haven't had an opportunity to see prior to tonight.
Okay.
That's the whole point
I
of the
don't
10
want to
day.
argue with it, but just.
I don't want to argue with you either, I'm making
My
a point.
opinion is, we're allowed to introduce new evidence at the hearing. We have to have our application and our plans, and that's all that essentially needs to be on the record.
And I disagree with that, so we have a fundamental disagreement.
We do.
Mr. Kennedy, I don't know if that's an important aspect. But
Sure.
in terms of what you believe is proper. I
Yes.
know in the past, this board has allowed new exhibits to come to our attention. But the question is, was that a pre-requirement that had to be provided?
No, I'm not aware, but we're gonna have, it sounds like we're not gonna finish up tonight, but I'm not aware of anything that would prohibit someone from submitting an exhibit at the hearing. obviously the plans and the application have to be filed 10 days in advance. We do note the objection from Mr. Michelini. He is here, you can see these exhibits, and like I said, I don't think we're going to be finishing up tonight, so there'll be more time, but we'll do further research on that.
Thank you for doing that, Joe. Could you design a house where you park under the house?
Yes.
Okay, and could that be done here, where you eliminate some portion of the basement and have a parking spot under the house?
Yes.
And if you did that, that would prevent having a parking space essentially in the front yard, right? You'd have a driveway in the front yard, but you could have a parking space under the house, and actually you could have a parking space in the front yard as well and comply, correct?
Comply with,
Parking.
yes.
And what about your design have you done, if anything, to mitigate fire risk with this three-story home being so close to the homes on each side of it?
I've held more than 3 feet off of each property line so that I can meet building code fire rules.
Okay, and what about an emergency vehicle? Can an emergency vehicle get to the back of this house?
No.
What have you done anything with regard to your design that would deal with runoff? Does your design at all deal with rainwater runoff?
It will when, if approved and working drawings are done. I put a skirted roof around the entirety of the house so that I can bring water down anywhere that it makes sense for the site engineer to take water down. And I believe, have you done that already?
We did not design.
Okay.
All right, so that is for the engineer, but as of yet undesigned, or not designed, correct?
Correct, but set up so that we're as flexible as possible.
Are you aware that some of the neighbors get ponding and puddling in heavy rains in the back? Are you aware of that?
No.
If that does, assuming the testimony will come into that effect, and I don't want to have to bring it back to address it, will the design that you've made adequately address puddling and ponding in the back, or that would be up to the engineer?
That would be the site engineer.
The AC pads are in the back of the house, right?
Correct.
Are they elevated?
They are just elevated an inch or two above the ground.
So if there was a storm, or if there was another superstorm Sandy,
We're not in a flood zone.
you're not in the flood zone there?
Correct.
Okay. The stairs going up and down into the second story, you said that there was a landing. Is that landing halfway up those stairs?
Yes.
Okay. How wide are those stairs?
The stairs are 4 feet wide.
So it's 4 feet, okay, got it, 4 feet wide. Just give me a moment, make sure I covered everything. The half story or the third story, the wall, where the wall meets the intersection of the roof at the third story, how high is that wall? Is that a 3-foot wall?
It's 0.
Okay, explain that to me, because this,
This-
I don't
this
see that in
roof
this
line-
design.
This roof line hits at 0.
Okay, what about,
I can't see what you're.
yeah, let's just look at A13. You have a roof line going across here, about a third of the way down A13, right? And where's that?
That's all roof.
That's all roof, so this is roof to roof.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to understand it.
Sure.
And how high is there a knee wall?
No.
There's no knee wall at all?
No.
Okay. And where these dormers are,
Mhm.
how high, how big are the windows where the roof line of the dormer goes down to the window? How high is this, or how vertical, what's the vertical length of that window?
How tall is the window?
Yes.
That one in
When I
particular?
say the window, I mean the window and the casing around it. So,
Oh, wait, I'm in the wrong scale.
okay, that's fine.
It's 4.5 feet.
All right, so that's gonna be, is that permitted by the ordinance,
Yes,
the 4.5?
yes.
Even though there is a 3-foot, I heard in the earlier application about a 3-foot requirement between the wall and the roof line.
No maximum allowed, and we're at
Maximum.
0.
Right, you're at 0 except for the dormers. The
Dormers are allowed to pop through that. There's
and
rules
they're
about
allowed,
that.
okay, they're allowed to pop through at 4.5 feet?
They're allowed to pop through as long as the pitch of the roof does not exceed 4 on 12 and the length does not exceed 10 feet.
So essentially, you can get past the 3-foot rule by meeting those other requirements.
That's correct. It's built into the ordinance.
Now, on the plan, there's a difference between gross livable area and gross floor area, correct? I believe on the plan, there's a distinction between the two in one of the notes. Let's see.
In this plan?
No, I thought it was on your plan, actually.
There, my plan is here.
Where were the notes? So we're looking at A12, and you have schedules up at the top, right? And you have proposed floor area
Ratio,
you have livable area,
gross livable area.
gross livable area. Do you have gross floor area too, or just gross livable?
No, just the two.
Just the two, okay. And the gross livable area is greater than the
Floor area.
floor area. And why is that?
Because it includes the thickness of the exterior walls.
Okay, but it still doesn't include the decks, the balconies, or the basement?
Correct.
Okay. So the gross livable area, and this is 2,731 square feet.
That's correct.
Is that based on footprint?
Yes,
Okay.
including the exterior walls.
Right, now, I understand. I'm trying to understand your notes here.
Sure.
Okay, so if we were to, when a house is usually, you say, how many square feet is a house? You're usually looking at the footprint and making the calculation typically, right? So that's the type of calculation you would make if you said, well, how big is this house? You'd say, well, the gross floor area is 2,731 square feet.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's why I put it on the plans.
Okay, and so it's not the lower number that's used for floor area ratio, which
Yes,
is...
it is.
no,
Absolutely it is.
The,
Floor area ratio, by definition, measures to the inside face of the exterior walls.
I understand that. What I'm saying is the floor area ratio is less than that. That's 25-22,
That's correct.
where 1,950 feet is allowable.
Correct.
I have no further questions. Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Okay, I think it's public questions. Wait, no, if the questions of the architect.
Do you want public questions of the architect?
Well,
Do you want-
board and then public. Sure. Okay, let's start down this thing.
So we're gonna do that this time, but usually we always wait till the end to ask our questions.
Well, as we were dividing it up, I thought we were gonna go, if the board, would the board like to hold their questions till the end? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right, very good. Okay, yep, that's fine. Okay, planner.
I think we should see if the public has any questions, because essentially those two attorneys are the public, but there may be people unrepresented who may have questions.
Okay, is there anyone here that's not represented by the attorneys that have questions for the architect? No? Okay.
Sorry to waste the board's time.
No, it didn't, no, that was smart to do. There's no telling that. We want to make sure we give everyone the opportunity to
So,
speak.
excuse me, I'm sorry, but we can,
You'll have an opportunity, you're my client, so you're not allowed to talk now. You'll have an opportunity to testify later.
they're asking, that's why.
Yeah, this is just for questions of the public by people who aren't represented.
Of the
That's what they're
architect.
asking. Specific questions to the architect.
If anyone from the public is not represented by one of the attorneys here, they would like to ask the architect questions, now would be a good time to do that. The board is passing on that opportunity. We've chosen not to ask her at this time. Okay, great. All right, so, Mr. Rigo, I think it's.
Yes, I'd like to call Joe Kashuba. Thanks, Mike.
You want that out? Yep.
Good evening. Joe, you testified before this board before, is that correct?
Yes.
So why don't you just refresh the board's recollection about your qualifications?
Sure. Licensed engineer, licensed planner in the state of New Jersey, have a master's and bachelor's degree from Malone University in structural and civil engineering. I've testified before numerous boards in both the capacity as a planner and engineer, this board and numerous boards throughout Long Island and Ocean County. Obtained my engineering license 2005, planner's license 2007.
Happy to accept those credentials, thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, for the record.
Yeah, no objection for the
No
record.
objection.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Kashuba, you were hired by Zainab to help design this property, right?
Yes.
And you prepared a variance plan dated February 9th, 2022, and last revised July 25th, 2022?
Correct.
Can you take us through that plan and the variances that are necessary and provide your opinion as to why these variances may be granted?
Absolutely. So the plan, I'll put it up on the board here.
Have you marked that, Joe?
We haven't marked it separately as part of the original submission package. I think it's identified as A8.
So would you take this?
So the plan, as you see up on the board, the left-hand side being the existing conditions on the property, the right-hand side being the proposed. Looking at the existing conditions, we have an interior undersized lot, the north side of 15th Ave. It's 2,500 square feet. In the R40 zone, it is 25 feet wide, 100 feet deep. You see the existing one-story frame structure in the center of the property. It's actually shaded towards the eastern side. It does have several non-conformities pre-existing. The front yard setback on the home is 15.5 feet. The average of the two neighboring homes, which is how front yard setback is measured in Borough of Belmar, is 15.61. So it is actually slightly prominent of the two homes flanking the property. It has an approximate 8-foot deep porch forward of that, which is a permitted amenity. You're permitted to have a porch forward of the front yard setback. And that has a front setback of 7.83 feet. Again, as I said, the existing home is shaded towards the eastern side, has a side yard setback of 2.4 feet on the east side and 3.95 feet on the west side. 5 feet is required in this zone. And you'll note at the back right corner of the property, there's a lean-to shed on that easterly side that actually crosses the property line. So for fire purposes, there is zero access to the rear yard on the right side of the property in the current condition, and maintains a zero setback to that shed. There's an existing curb cut, generally centered on the western property line. I have discussed, same with the attorney regarding this particular location. There is no driveway, as Ms. Hearn testified to, or no legal driveway, I should say. On the left-hand side, there's a narrow walkway on the neighboring property. One narrow walkway, approximately 3 feet wide. Other than that, it is a lawn or landscape area. The front setback on the neighboring property to the porch is 7.71 feet, and to the home, 15.76 feet.
I'm sorry, 15.76
to
the home.
To the home.
And the other one was to the porch?
The other was to the porch, correct.
And that was the front setback of the neighboring property?
That is correct.
Thank you.
And the implication of that being, both structures are less than 20 feet from the face of the home to the property line. So therefore, there could not be any legal parking stall there, because you can't fit a vehicle from the property line off the right of way on these properties for parking. So any vehicle that parks there actually parks hanging out over the sidewalk. Parks there, illegally, there's a non-conforming stall there. The area, and I'll refer now to the aerial diagram, A11. This area was prepared by Ms. Hearn's office, but depicts the property and the surrounding properties. You'll see noted in red the property in question, noted at 208 15th Ave. You see the properties immediately east and west. The block is
And
generally...
Joe, just do me a favor, would you stand up and just show that to the people in the back, just give them a quick glance into the side, thanks.
So an aerial of the surrounding neighborhood with the property in question in red, fronting on 15th Ave.
Thank you.
The lots in the area are of several different sizes. This particular 25-foot lot is not generally unique. There are 3 other 25-foot lots immediately to the west of the property. And then the remainder of the block is primarily 30, 40, and 50-foot wide lots, with the exception of the northeast corner or some condos on a larger lot. All single-family zone, but it is important to note that there are several non-conforming uses in the area, specifically the properties immediately east and west of this property. The property immediately east, as was indicated through testimony, has 2 dwellings on it. A 2-bedroom home in the front and a 2-bedroom home in the rear, as noted in the tax records. And the property on the right side, east of the property, is a duplex identified on the tax records, a 2-family home having 2 2-bedroom dwellings in it. This property is a conforming use of single family, and the applicant is proposing a conforming single family use. So we move to the middle of the page showing the proposed conditions, where the applicant proposes to demolish the existing dwelling and sheds and develop that new 2.5-story dwelling with a basement, which has been testified to. The finished floor of that would be elevated above grade about 4 feet, give or take, and have the driveway on the right-hand side of the property with a new curb cut to provide parking on the property where no legal parking exists today. Ms. Hearn testified, I agree with the testimony, that there would be no loss of on-street parking as a result. I'll refer back to A11. You can see the curb cut on the aerial, and you see areas of parking to the east and west. That curb cut, half of it in front of this property would be eliminated as a result of the construction, so there would be no need for a curb cut there. So in an effort to increase or make sure there's no decrease of on-street parking, the portion east of the property will get shorter, only allowing 1 car, but the on-street parking west of the property will get longer to allow for 2 cars. So essentially, you have 2 cars on the right, 1 on the left, existing condition. Proposed would be 2 cars on the left, 1 car on the right. Just shifts over to allow that driveway access. You will see in the aerial, not everybody follows those lines, and 2 cars did squeeze into that smaller area as well. Further indicating that we're not going to lose any on-street parking here as a result of this application. But we are adding 1 off-street parking stall, which doesn't exist today. There was some discussion early on in the design process regarding a subgrade garage here. Given the distance from the road and the grading, that would not be feasible from a drainage perspective. You would create a chute that would allow any rainwater to run into the basement. That was one of the, as Ms. Hearn indicated, we've had some difficult conversations with the applicant throughout the process in the very beginning, kind of figuring out how this lays out. And that was something that she did want us to explore, and we did look at that, and it's just not really feasible and not good engineering practice in my opinion, to have a subgrade garage below grade. So we did take a look at that early on in the design. Now looking at the layout, the front yard setback, and this is really unique to this property and the way Belmar defines front yard setbacks, specifically with that front balcony. The average of the front yard setbacks of the two neighbors is 15.61 feet. So we can legally put the face of the house at 15.61 feet and have a porch extend 8 feet forward to that, meaning that porch could be at 7.61 feet. What the applicant decided to do was push the house further back to allow for that parking stall. And by doing so, they made the porch a little bit deeper. In doing so, that porch winds up being more than 8 feet deep. So that's the variance that's being requested for front yard. It's not the house that's in non-compliance. It's the fact that the front porch is more than 8 feet into the front yard, because the front yard starts from the face of the house. And that discussion that Mary had indicated was essentially subtraction by addition. We can get rid of the variance by making the house bigger. Very unusual. But technically, if we pulled this left portion of the first floor, it only needs to be the first floor, if we pulled that forward such that the deck is, it's actually less than 2 feet, 18 inches, I'm sorry, 21 inches, we pull this little portion back, now our porch is 8 feet deep and fully compliant, but we've actually taken away air lane open space, enclosed the front more, pushed it closer to the street, and impacted the neighbor's views. So we intentionally pushed that area back, made the front porch a little bit deeper to keep that open view. Because obviously, in a front yard and streetscape, open porches have less impact to air lane open space than the full structure does. So it allows for those views up and down. As everyone's on their porch, you can look through everyone else's open porch. And that's the intent of Velmar's design, to have these porches in the front yard that are promoted by the way they're defined in the ordinance and the way the setbacks are defined. So that is one of the variances we're requesting, is to allow us to have a deeper porch rather than artificially pushing the house forward to eliminate that variance. Better planning, in my opinion. Secondly, we heard a lot of testimony from Mary about the side yard setback. So obviously a very narrow property, some relief there, certainly anticipated at any time you have a substantially narrow lot. As proposed, the house is 18.83 feet wide, just shy of 19, allowing for a 3-foot 1-inch side setback on either side. Mary indicated it, but I will reinforce it. The benefit there is that it is compliant with the building code to allow for windows and still be adequate for fire protection. There will be fire rating required on those side walls, as is required on any home that's less than 5 feet to a property line or need. And this will fully comply with those building codes. But the intent was to pull this, specifically on the east side, pull this back from the property line so that the windows are technically legal. Right now, there are windows on the eastern side of that house that's only 2.5 feet off the property line, which is technically non-compliant with the current building code. And that shed, being on the property line, definitely non-compliant with the building code, specifically the fire portions of that. So that distance was not chosen for any at thin air. That was chosen to ensure that we are fire compliant. And it was also chosen because this is a narrow lot. A compliant house here would be 15 feet wide. A 15-foot wide house would look extremely out of place on this property, or any property in Belmont. Especially building to contemporary standards. And the allowance, again, we're permitted to have a 35-foot tall home here. We're permitted to have a 2.5-story home. If this were developed at 15 feet wide, and we took that area out, this would be almost compliant with the FAR, but it would be extremely out of place for the neighborhood. It would be extremely out of place from a streetscape view, and just would not be practical, and I would say very difficult, if not impossible, to design a home for contemporary living at that width. It's just not feasible. The rear yard setback here complies at 25 feet. So I know there's been some discussion about how deep the house is. No deeper into the rear yard than is permitted by ordinance. The deck in the rear yard is fully compliant, allowed to be in the rear yard setback. The height here complies. Again, as I indicated, the front yard, although non-compliant, is actually better in my opinion, than what's allowed by the ordinance. So if you look at the height, front, and back, everything is where it should be, in my opinion, and the sides are where you would expect them to be on this narrow of a lot. So when we take the 360 surround of the property, the setbacks, the size here is not out of the ordinary for this neighborhood, for this zone, or for Belmar, in my opinion. The building coverage is over at 50.44%, where 30% is permitted. Again, this is a substantially undersized lot. We would anticipate having some building coverage over it. In my opinion, it is a modest home at 2,500 square feet. It's commensurate with the other homes that can be built in the block. There are 21 lots in this block. 20 of them are dedicated, or I should say, standard lots. One of them is a condominium lot in the northeast corner, lot 1. But there are 20 lots. 16 of those, the floor area ratio, or the floor area of this house would be permitted on those lots.
I'm sorry, say it again, Joe.
Of the 20 lots, not including the condominium lots, there are 16 of them where this floor area would be permissible, the amount of floor area we're proposing. It's only the 25-foot lots that it's non-conforming, which are this property and the properties to the east, I'm sorry, to the west. The lot coverage is slightly over at 56.72%, where 55% is permitted. That equates to 43 square feet. We've really eliminated, there are no frills here as far as pavers, hardscape, or anything. We have a front walkway, we have a driveway to provide access. The driveway is a little bit wider, about 12 feet wide instead of 10. Technically, we could shorten that up a little bit, but given the geometry here, that extra 2 feet allows you to back out and turn. Having a 10-foot wide driveway really limits the ability to make a turn as you're backing out of the driveway, especially when it's short. The rear deck is open slat. There's no patio in the backyard. It would really limit it to as little impervious coverage as is necessary. The only other option, some towns, Belmar does not recognize it, but some towns allow grass strips down the middle to try and manufacture more pervious coverage. They always become a maintenance headache, and they come unsightly because most of the time the intention is to have lawn there. The lawn dies, it becomes a strip of dirt. I don't propose that here. I don't think it's a great solution, but it is one way that we could try and reduce some impervious coverage. But beyond that, there's really no fat to trim here when it comes to impervious coverage. And then lastly, the floor area ratio, as has been discussed substantially, but we are proposing 100.8%, so where 78% is permitted. On a conforming lot, 4,000 square feet, that's a 3,000 square foot home. It's necessary to create a contemporary dwelling livable for year-round use, as was testified by the architect. Floor area ratio specifically is a little bit different of a variance than the other variances that are being requested. It's found in the D section, NJAC 4055D 70D4. So what the D4 is deviation from a floor area ratio. And that says that a D variance here is not a true use variance. It's not a D1. The use is permitted, residential in a residential zone. And the courts have reviewed these several times, specifically in Randolph Town Center versus Randolph. And in that case, a floor area ratio variance was approved, and someone appealed it in a commercial setting. What Randolph said for these types of variances is the use is permitted. The floor area ratio variance is virtually the same as a conditional use variance, in that you're just not meeting one of the conditions. You're not meeting the area required. Floor area ratio restrictions, like restrictions on density or bulk or building size, are commonly employed techniques for limiting the intensity or use of a property. Variances from them are governed by the D section because they could pose a potential to have a greater impact on the zone. The applicant for a floor area ratio variance need not show that the site is particularly suited for that. The court determined that the special reason standard should be relevant to the nature of the deviation from the ordinance. And what that means is, what's the impact of this home that's a little bit larger compared to a home that is compliant? So the standard of proof must show that the site will accommodate the problems associated with a floor area larger than permitted by the ordinance. So you heard from the objectors, the allowable square footage here, the floor area is 1,950 square feet. The applicant is proposing 2,522, so there's an increase of 572 square feet. So let's take a look at how that impacts, what that area actually impacts. We take a look at the home size, specifically the number of bedrooms. It's a 3-bedroom home. 2 bedrooms exist. Bedroom count is typically an indication of intensity. A conforming FAR can still have a 3-bedroom home on this level. There's no additional bedrooms, and by virtue of that, no additional parking demand. A 2-bedroom home here needs 2 parking stalls. A 3-bedroom home here needs 2 parking stalls. No parking stalls exist today. One's being added to try and improve that situation. So any way you develop this, whether or not you're asking for the floor area ratio variance, you need 2 parking stalls. We are improving by adding one. Architecturally, the height of the dwelling is compliant. The front setback is compliant, with the exception of that porch depth, which in my opinion is better planning. The look from the street remains unchanged if the dwelling has this, the added area. The look from the street is commensurate with the neighborhood. The impact of the neighborhood, 3 bedrooms is a modest intensity in this neighborhood. I just had indicated the sizes of the other lots surrounding the property. Specifically, like I said, that lot to the west, a 25-foot lot has, and I think I misspoke, has a 3-bedroom home in the front, and a 3-bedroom home in the rear. So specifically, 210, the tax records indicate those are both 3-bedroom homes. To the east is a multifamily home having 2 dwellings in it, both of which have 2 bedrooms for a total of 4. Lot 15, 2 to the west, a 4-bedroom home. Lot at 214, which is lot 16, a 3-bedroom home. So having a 3-bedroom home on a 25-foot lot is not out of character with this neighborhood. And in my opinion, will not have any detrimental impact on the neighborhood because it already exists at pretty much all the other 25-foot lots. The only real impact the FAR has here is perhaps the depth of the dwelling. But in this particular case, again, we comply with the rear yard setback. So someone can develop this lot, whether or not they're asking for the FAR, and put the house exactly where we're showing it, at the rear yard setback. I don't believe it has, in my opinion, any detrimental impact to the neighborhood by placing a home at the setback defined by your ordinance. And if the concern is to maintain the rear yard corridor, maybe a view corridor through the rear yard, a number of these properties, as you can see on the aerial, have dwellings in the backyard. The neighbor to the west, the neighbor 2 doors down to the east. Further down, you see a number of structures in the rear yard. So trying to maintain some corridor heading east or west just doesn't exist. In my opinion, this proposed structure will not have a detrimental impact upon it. So the real comparison here, when weighing an FAR variance, isn't comparing the existing house that are proposed, it's what does that increase in floor area really impact. In my opinion, it will not have a detrimental impact to the neighborhood. It winds up the same number of bedrooms, the house winds up in the same location that it could be built, even if conforming. I don't believe it has a detrimental impact. The bulk variances being requested can be granted under both the C1 and the C2 criteria. You've heard this from me multiple times. C1 criteria is the hardship criteria, and states specifically where by reason of exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of a specific property would result, and I'm paraphrasing, would result in peculiar and exceptional practical difficulties and undue hardship to grant a variance. So in this case, you've heard plenty of testimony. It's a very narrow lot, it's a small lot. So there is definitely a hardship here to develop this in a fully conforming manner. The variances we're requesting, I believe, are reasonable. You heard from the architect that they have designed a home with these types of variances. They've designed other homes with these types of variances before, and especially the side yard setback variances. They are, the objecting attorney is absolutely correct. Technically, that is 3 variances, all associated with the same issue. The 25-foot lot, we have to work within the confines of the 25-foot lot, and it would not be appropriate to build a 15-foot White House, in my opinion. The building coverage and lot coverage are also hardships. It is an undersized lot. There's inefficiencies. You heard the architect talk about you have one hallway and a room off to the side, whereas a wider home, typically speaking, you have a center hall and multiple rooms off of that hallway. You have a little bit more efficient use of space. So the home could tend to be a little larger when you have it as narrow as we do, in order to fit the same amount of space, rooms, usability on this type of property. And the parking relief here, again, it's not conforming now. There's no parking. We're trying to improve it to the best of our ability. So we do need a variance for only providing one stall rather than two, but the applicant's making the effort to provide one stall, whereas the majority of the homes on this street do not provide off-street parking. I believe the variances can be granted under the C2 criteria as well. That's the flexible C, where the benefits of zoning outweigh the detriments. The benefits of zoning are taken from Section 2 of the municipal land use law. So at this undersized lot, compliance with the setbacks and coverages is difficult. The proposal improves the non-conforming fire hazard on the east side. Again, if the lean-to shed at 0 feet, the house at just over 2 feet, this provides not only that it centers the property, or centers the home on the property and provides more than 3 feet on either side, it will also be built to current building code requirements for fire, specifically having fire-rated walls as is required. The project is certainly a substantial improvement and promotes a desirable visual environment. I don't know that we've really talked about the photo board, A10. Ms. Hearn indicated that her office took these photos. I've been to the site, and I agree these photos are representative of the area and the property in question. And speaking specifically of the middle photo on the top is the existing home. It is not a looker. It is definitely in need of improvement from a desirable visual environment. What's proposed and what's shown on Ms. Hearn's, specifically her colored elevations, is something much more, and I'll hold up both actually. Where'd it go? There it is. Something much more commensurate with shore living, something more commensurate with the architectural styles of the area. You see in the photos that Ms. Hearn provided some newer homes that have been built, specifically in these two bottom photos, showing larger porches, front porches, more shore type architecture and materials, something certainly more aesthetically pleasing than the home that exists there today. So in my opinion, this does promote secure safety from fire, flood, panic, and natural man-made disasters, and promotes a desirable visual environment. The last part of any variance is the balancing of the positive and the negative criteria. The negative criteria here, does it have a substantial detriment to the public good? Does it have a substantial detriment to the zone plan or the zoning ordinance? So we look at the impact to the public good, specifically impact to air, light, and open space. Again, we are saddled here with a substantial hardship in width. So the side setback, although non-conforming, is really due to that hardship and very difficult to comply. Beyond that, again, we're complying in the front, the height, and the back as far as the setbacks that the ordinance allows. That front setback for the depth of the front porch is, again, a technicality. It's something that we intentionally pulled back. We intentionally created that variance. So in my opinion, I don't believe this does have a substantial impact, substantial detrimental impact to air, light, open space. The existing home is there at those types of setbacks, and you can see in the photo, the adjoining homes are 2-story at similar setbacks. It is not unusual in this neighborhood, it's not unusual in this town to have 2 or 2.5-story homes at 3-foot setbacks. So in my opinion, I don't believe there is a substantial impact to air, light, open space. We meet the front, rear, and height. There's not a substantial detriment for parking, we're actually improving parking. We're shifting one on-street stall and adding an off-street stall. Certainly a benefit, especially in Belmar where parking is at a premium. And then any other detrimental impact you would have for any single-family home built here. You know, the noise is typical for a residential area. Traffic, whether it's this home or complying homes, the same trip generation, there's no other substantial impact, in my opinion, as a result of granting these variances. And in my opinion, it will not have a substantial detriment to the zone plan or the zoning ordinance. As Ms. Hearn indicated, the FAR and the coverages don't entertain a 2,500 square foot home. These are pre-existing undersized lots. And we meet the intent by complying with the rear setback, complying with the average of the front homes, and with the exception of the side, which is a clear hardship. So my opinion, there is no detriment to the zoning plan or the zoning ordinance. So I believe the benefits of the variances do outweigh the detriments, and the applicant can be granted the variances as requested.
Joe, can I just back you up into the engineering portion?
Sure.
Can we talk about how we're handling drainage?
Certainly. So we do show some drainage on the property. We have not, I should say, on the design plans. Typically, we would finalize that design at the time of plot plan, if we were so granted a variance. But we do show some yard drains as well as a pervious pipe surrounding the property in an effort to address drainage. The front of the property is at elevation 100.4, give or take, the front lawn. The back of the property is at elevation 102.2, so the property does drain from rear to front out towards the street. And the intention of adding the yard drains and perforated pipe is to allow any excess runoff to flow through that and then overflow towards the street, not onto the neighbors. A detailed design will be performed should the applicant gain approval, but in my opinion, this is a typical engineering solution for these types of lots, and there will be no detrimental impact to the neighbors as far as.
So Joe, you've reviewed, obviously, the area, you can see it on the aerial, right?
Yes.
So the area, would you say that it's substantially built out?
Yes.
And is there any other land available for making this lot larger?
There is not, as evidence on the aerial. I lost it. So no, there is no available land to rectify that.
So we actually did a little research into the title and the creation of this property, right?
We did.
And I'm going to show you what I know you sent this to me. What is that?
That is the Belmar Park tract map that created the subdivision of this area, specifically 14th and 15th Ave in Block 9.
And we'll have these marked, but I have two other documents, the deeds that actually created this lot. So, Joe, take a look at these deeds and tell me if you looked at them.
I have seen them before, yes.
And what do they show?
They show the transfer of this property. Specifically, the first one shows lots 40, 39, and half of 38 being transferred.
Let me just stop you there. When you look at this map, these are all 20-foot lots?
Correct. So the original subdivision, creating all the lots here, created 20-foot by 100-foot lots. So this original deed transferred 2.5 lots, or essentially 2.5 times 20, 50-foot wide area, from one person to the other.
It's into a guy named Gilman, right?
Into Gilman, yes.
That's in 1922?
I believe you're correct. Yes.
And the other deed shows it coming out from Gilman, right?
The other deed shows 25 feet of that, 1.5 of those lots, coming out of Gilman and going to Gold Park.
And that's in 1925.
That's in 1925.
Thus creating this lot.
This lot, identified here, was created in 1925.
Kevin, if we can just have these marked, I think where are we? 14?
All right, so A14 is those deeds.
A14 should be the map, because we discussed it
All right,
first.
A14, and what's the map?
The map is the filed,
Belmar tract.
Belmar Park tract, filed August 3rd, 1908. It's a deed from a fellow by the name of Barr to Gilman.
Okay. And that was dated 1922?
I'm sorry, that was 1924.
1924.
And then Mr. Gilman flipped it, I guess.
So that would be A15, and then A16.
Is from Mr. Gilman to a fellow by the name of Jacob Goldfarb.
And that's the date of what?
April 20th, 1925.
All right, why don't you show that, if you don't mind showing it to Roberta and Joe, and then we'll shoot it up to the board.
I have no objection.
I've seen it
Okay.
prior to 10:02.
Thank you.
Ford?
Yeah. Oh, you can take it up, that would be great.
I don't think it's necessary.
Okay.
We'll just give it to April in here. We'll mark it into the record. If you left, she happily put it up.
Are you done with the planning presentation, Mr. Pickett?
I am.
Okay, before we allow the objecting attorneys to cross-examine, I want to remind everybody that we have a hard stop at 10 o'clock. Either plan accordingly, or, if we can't get it done this evening, we'll defer to a future meeting. But I want to make sure that people are aware of that, that we will be ending at 10. Okay?
Is it Kashuba?
Yes.
Mr. Kashuba, I'm also Joe. With regard to the floor area ratio, that Randolph case is a commercial case, right? It is not a residential case.
Correct.
So you could make the argument that the language of that case, it's not exactly a fit for this situation,
I
correct?
would disagree with that.
You disagree, but you're not an attorney, correct?
I'm not an attorney.
Okay. And with regard to the floor area ratio, you said it does impact the depth of the home. Is that correct?
I said it could.
It could. It could in this case, correct? You could make this house shorter and not as deep and comply with floor area ratio. Isn't that correct?
Potentially, you'd have to speak to the architect about the
Okay.
specifics.
Well, the architect indicated that she could design a home of 1,950 square feet.
She did.
Still have a basement with, I don't know how many square feet, because now the home would be a little bit smaller, so maybe not 800, but maybe 600. And you could still have a bunch of decks and balconies as well, because they're not in floor area ratio, correct?
Correct.
And if you did that and you shorten the home in the back, that would provide additional light, air, and open space in that area that's already crowded with two-family homes next door and other structures, correct?
Not crowded on this lot.
No, but on the adjacent lots, you made a point of saying that the adjacent lots were crowded. The one to the west had a two-family on it, correct?
I think it said it impacted the view corridor, I didn't say crowded.
Well, okay, you didn't say crowded, but I'm saying crowded, okay? So I'll use your term. It impacts view corridor. So if you shorten this house, it would increase the proposed house, it would increase the view corridor, would it not?
Yes,
Of
any
course-
shorter
Of
home.
course it would. Yeah, okay.
Shorter in depth, I should say.
Yes, shorter in depth, that's what we're talking about. Okay, and so the floor area ratio could be lessened to meet the graduated ordinance. Are you aware that the ordinance is graduated, as I indicated, right? So when you have a bigger lot, you have a different floor area ratio, it's actually smaller. And as the lots get smaller, the floor area ratio gets bigger. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and for whatever reason, the governing body decided that they're gonna stop it at, I think it's under 4,000 square feet is 78%, where over 4,000, I think was, I forget.
75.
75, thank you for that. So they took that into account because they graduated that floor area ratio, and they said, look, under 4,000, we're gonna make it 78%, right?
That's what the ordinance says, I don't know.
Well,
I don't know how they came to that determination.
But you would think that the governing body would have relied on some kind of a planning report in order to get there, right?
I have no idea how they.
You don't know how that happens?
You'd have to speak to Ms. Hearn, who was involved in
Well, I just think we're getting into speculation at this point.
I'm asking him, if he doesn't know, he doesn't know, that's
that.
fine.
I don't know.
Now, this house has walk-in closets, right?
I have not reviewed the floor plan.
You haven't looked? You didn't look at the floor plan to see if there's walk-in closets?
Not to look if there's walk-in closets.
You know there's a study, right?
I'm aware there's a study.
And it's got a closet and a window, and it could be used as a bedroom, right?
I don't know if it has an egress window, you have to speak to the architect whether it's.
So you don't know?
Whether
The
it's-
architect said it could be used as a bedroom. She said that. You heard that testimony.
I would say you rely on.
So you think she's telling the truth, correct?
I have no reason to believe she's not.
Okay. So it could be used as a bedroom. This applicant says they're going to use it as a study, but that's personal to this applicant, correct?
And to many applicants.
To many, but
especially
not
first
all. But not all, right?
Probably not all.
Okay. And you don't need a study, it's not a matter of hardship to have a study, correct?
I would not classify it as a hardship
Right,
variance.
it's personal to the applicant.
And want to be clear, there's no relief needed for the study.
Okay, but if you, there is in the sense that if you eliminated the study, then you get closer to complying with the FAR, the floor area ratio, correct?
I think Ms. Herman said that there's more to it than just removing a room. There's, every piece of the home affects another piece, so, just pulling the study out and making it a different room doesn't necessarily make the house.
I'm not saying making a different room, I'm saying eliminate the square footage of the study and making the house smaller. That would move you better toward meeting the FAR requirement, right?
That would reduce the floor area of that.
And similarly, if you didn't have a large bathroom with a 2-shower door and a separate tub, and you just had a tub and a shower, that could reduce the size of the bathroom and also get you closer to the FAR, correct?
Reducing the size of the bathroom reduces the floor area.
So you don't need walk-in closets. You don't, they're not a matter of need, they're a matter of want, correct? For an
I
applicant.
have to talk to the architect.
So you don't
I
know?
don't know that I understand the question.
You don't know whether a house that's designed, you don't know whether or not it needs walk-in closets, or if it can be designed without them?
Well, it needs the amenities necessary for living, and the intent here is contemporary living, so whether or not a specific walk-in closet is needed, I don't know how,
So
a closet is needed,
A
whether it's
closet is
walk-in or
needed.
not.
I'll concede a closet is needed.
Okay.
But for contemporary living, you're saying this house needs to be built for contemporary living? It can be built with a regular closet. It doesn't need to be a walk-in.
Certainly could be built with a
Right.
regular closet.
So if you did these things that were not needed, you could get closer to the FAR requirement, right?
A smaller home would get closer.
And that's possible to design.
You'd have to talk to the architect. I would say, I deal with the box could be made smaller, the architect defines what goes
Right.
in.
If you make the box smaller and you make it, let's say, 6 inches narrower, not a lot narrower, but 6 inches narrower, you would definitely affect the FAR, correct?
Presumably, yeah.
And get closer to what you need in terms of the requirement, right?
You would get closer to the variance, or the
It would lessen,
zoning criteria.
it would lessen the variance.
Yes.
Okay? And you would also increase the side yards and lessen those variances. Even though there would be variances, they would be lessened, correct?
Correct.
Instead of being exacerbated, right now, there's some relief on the one side, but the aggregate is exacerbated by an additional 3 inches, correct?
That is right.
Okay. And it is a tenet or a principle of zoning is not to expand nonconformities. You would agree with that, wouldn't you? Or if you don't know, that's fine.
I don't know. It's a tenant of.
It's a
Repeat the
principle.
question.
It's a principle of zoning that when you have a nonconformity, you should not expand it. The goal of zoning is to bring, in other words, the goal of zoning is to bring properties into conformity, not to make them less conforming. Now, I realize the one side yard is becoming more conforming, but when you add the two together, it's less conforming. You've conceded that, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And I would say that it is a goal of zoning except when justified.
Except when justified. But you could make this house a couple inches bigger and get rid of that nonconformity, or, I'm sorry, a couple inches smaller and get rid of that nonconformity in terms of width, right?
Well, no, it would still be non-conforming. Again,
You could get rid of the aggregate. That's what we're talking about. The nonconformity we're talking about is
in order
the
to
aggregate.
the aggregate, the house has to be 15 feet wide. I think what you're saying is you're trying to get it back to the existing nonconformity.
Yes, you could get it back to
You
the
asked that
existing.
it's
I'm
non-
sorry, bad question by me. I apologize. You could lessen the extent of the nonconformity by getting it back to what it is now.
Correct, it's approximately 3 inches wider. If it were 3 inches narrower, it would be the same nonconformity that is.
Right, so you've essentially aggravated the existing nonconformity by making it worse in that regard.
The total side setback was reduced by 3 inches.
So the answer is yes.
Yes.
Okay. Now, have you talked about the impact on other properties. Have you done a shadow study?
I have not done a shadow study.
What's a shadow study?
Just a review of the, my understanding of it is a review of the impacts of shadows from the home on adjacent lots and homes.
Would that be important to do here, given the fact that you are going 35 feet on a very narrow lot?
I don't believe it's necessary in this particular neighborhood, as most of the lots are fully developed, and there are many that are 2 stories tall. The existing home on both east and west of this property are taller than the home that exists there today. So right now, the shadows from those lots are actually impacting this lot.
Right, but the taller a house, the longer the shadow will cast. Isn't that correct?
Yeah.
Right, and this is going to be taller than anything around it, right? It's going to be taller than the house on each side of it.
It will be taller than the homes next to it.
And it'll be taller than the homes next next to those homes too, correct?
I did not look at the heights.
Well, look at the,
But I do need to interrupt here. There's not a height variance being discussed, right?
that's not the issue. The issue is when you have.
The issue is, there's not a height variance being discussed.
Right.
So the discussion about the shadow and the height of the home is definitely taking up time that we should get.
Right, the case law is very clear. The case law is clear that when you have setback variances, okay, you consider the height of the dwelling that's being proposed, because the shorter those setbacks, the greater the impact of the height, even if it's conforming. Even if it's conforming. I mean, it's simple. You stand next to a house that's 35 feet high, and then stand 5 feet away from that house, the impact of that height is different, okay? And that's what the case law says. So you are, as a board, to consider the impact of these side yard variances with regard to the height of the structure. What is the height of the structure there now?
Calculated that.
But it's 1 story.
It is a 1-story home.
And now we're essentially going 3 stories, even though it's a 2.5 story technically.
2 stories with a roof. It's
2
2.5
stories with a
stories
roof.
with the half stories underneath the roof.
Right, but that half story is a dwelling area.
From the side of the property where the side yard setback you're discussing, you would see 2 stories and a roof.
Right, but what I'm saying is, and from the front and the back, you would see 2 stories and what looks like a dwelling area, you're not gonna see the roof.
The gable end.
Right, you'll see the gable ends. And that is a dwelling area up there, it's not an
That is.
attic, right?
That is, if it were an attic, it would have the same shape and layout from the front.
Okay. And it's built to the maximum height, correct?
The allowable.
Yeah, allowable maximum height. And the turret in the front, that bumps out, right?
Yes.
How far does that bump out?
I think it was 2 feet.
2.4 inches.
2 foot 4 inches.
All right, and that area is just essentially, that area is not needed, that's an architectural feature, correct?
Well, I would say that architectural features are needed to promote a desirable environment.
This house needs a turret, is that what you're saying? It needs a turret?
I'm saying, define need, because
Right.
from a benefit to the neighborhood, having a very flat house with no architectural features is gonna have a greater visual impact, detrimental in my opinion, than a home that has some depth and texture.
Sure, but if you eliminate the turret, this still has a ton of architectural features, doesn't it? I mean, do you really want to go that route? You've got this feature on the side here, that's an architectural feature, right?
There are several features on the
You
property.
got these 2 features, you got the roof line, you got essentially 3 roof lines without regard to the turret. You got this roof line, you got this roof line, you got this roof line, you even have this roof line down here, because that's a roof line technically, right? There's roof shingles on that. Architect testified, right.
You're
So
pointing
you've
to
got
this here, yes.
1, 2, 3, 4 roof lines even without the turret. So there's lots of architectural features, correct? Plus you have a little roof that's sticking out between the first and second floor, plus you have the balconies, you have the 2 balconies, plus you have a porch, which is not all flat across, right? Is this all flat across? Well, you have the stairs coming down and a covered porch.
Well, it's not, so that this turret lines up with the ground or first floor foyer area.
Okay. So my point is, there's lots of architectural features, are there not?
There are a lot of architectural features. You asked me the question whether it's needed. I asked you to define need, because in my
Need is-
opinion, and the opinion of the architect, as was testified to, it improves the architectural aesthetic.
And at the same time, it blocks light, air, and open space to the neighbors to the west, correct?
No, I respectfully, I think they both made their points, so maybe you could move on.
But also, there's no variance necessary.
It doesn't
So
matter.
They could actually block air, light, and open space more.
There is a variance necessary, because you're building something that is exceeding the allowable floor area ratio by almost 23%.
Okay, gentlemen,
So
this
every-
sounds like a great legal argument to make in the conclusions, but maybe you can do your directions and we come back to that. You can make that point for later on.
And if I may just offer, the face of that turret is at 17.67 feet. The average neighbor is at 15.6.
But the average house next door, this is a second to third story terrace, is it not?
It goes up.
Yes,
to
it
the
goes up.
upper stories,
Right. So it's going to block the sun, correct?
Excuse
You could block
Mr.
the sun
McLeany,
more.
I just, for clarity's sake, I need to understand something about the half story. If the half story were unfinished space, would that, and if we're truly just an attic or insulation like a half story would be, would that be charged against floor area ratio or not?
If it's an unfinished space, unconditioned, I don't believe it counts towards floor area ratio. I have to check, but yeah.
Does not.
And what's the square footage on that half story?
I would defer to the architect.
It's on the plans.
584 square feet.
And the total house is what?
2,500.
So at the end of the day, and I just want to make sure that we're understanding this, because I think we're going down roads that I think the board needs to understand the logic and questioning here. If that were simply an attic, and it gets subtracted from the floor area, this really comes out to the fact that that half story is being used. Because other than that, the home itself
Would look exactly the
would
same.
look exactly the same, except that that room would not be finished.
Correct.
Okay, just so I understand that. Continue, Mr. McLean.
So if that space in the attic or that half story was not used, that would make the entire use of the house less intense, arguably, correct? Because you have less space to use. Isn't that right?
There's a bedroom up there, we eliminate a bedroom.
Sure, and that would be a less intense use of this residential structure, would it not?
I don't know that I understand the question. It would still be space that could be utilized by the owner
Right,
of
but
the property.
it would only be utilized for, let's say, storage or something like that. And that would be less intense than the normal everyday use of the rooms of a house, correct?
I believe you're.
Can I just ask a question? The testimony on the half story was 584 square feet. That was?
Correct.
Now, the other lots, how many lots on this street have 25-foot lots?
4 of them.
And how many of those have cottages on them that are one-story?
Well, as you can see from the photos, one of which is the property immediately adjacent, that is, appears to be a 2-story home. The home next to that appears to be 2 stories, and the home next to that appears to be 2 stories.
And are any of those anywhere near 35 feet high?
Again, I did not measure the height of those.
Well, do you know? They're 2 stories as opposed to 3, so they wouldn't be 35 feet high, correct?
Well, again, we're not proposing 3, but they're less than 35. I don't know how much less they are, but they are less than 35.
But they're a full story less than 35, correct?
No, because it's a half story is not technically a full story. Again, that area is built underneath the roof line.
Okay. I'm talking about the adjacent homes. they're two-story homes. So they
So,
are,
so the one adjacent home, I see 2 stories and a roof line. The home next to that, I see, it appears to be more of a 1.5 story, and then the yellow home next to that, the other 25-foot lot appears to be 2 stories with a roof line.
okay. And all of that would be at least 10 feet lower than what's being proposed.
Mr. McLeany,
I
Mr.
can't
McLeany,
even
I
know.
need to interject for a minute, okay? I'm the chair of this committee, I have to
Yes.
keep this thing moving, right? And we've already established that there 35 feet is permitted in this
I
zone.
understand that, sir.
And there's no new home that comes in front of us that is not 35 feet. I understand the point you made, and it resonated relative to the side yard setbacks, but continuing to dwell on the 35 feet is wasting this board and the rest of the people in this room's time, because it's not relevant. The conversation is not relevant because 35 feet is permitted. It's not part of the variance. If you please focus on the variance.
For the
We
record,
can move on.
we're making a record here that may end up before Superior Court. So this is the only opportunity that I have to make a record. I don't get it, if it goes to Superior
Okay,
Court,
could you please
could I
just
finish?
recap the point that you're making about the
Okay.
35?
Let me finish.
And relative to the
Yeah,
other
that's what I
houses?
said, that's what I said, so speak.
So this is the only time I get to make a record. And that's very important because if this matter goes to Superior Court, I can't call witnesses, I can't, you don't get a do-over in Superior Court. This is the record. That's why it's recorded. I'm not trying to waste anybody's time. But there is a substantial body of case law that indicates that where you have side yard variances like this, where you're not meeting the side yard setbacks, that height is relevant.
Mr. McLeany, we've accepted that point. We're talking about homes that are next door that aren't 35 feet high.
Correct.
It's,
And the way that that impacts it is this is out of character with the neighbor, with the other homes that are on 25 feet.
But
That's why
35
I'm
feet
trying
is
to
allowed
demonstrate
in the
that.
zone.
They may be allowed in the zone, but they're not, those other homes, to the best of my knowledge, don't exceed the floor
But
area
if
ratio.
another home
of
is
this
going to
one
be
does.
built, it would be 35 feet. So that's been the history. I don't think someone's going to build 30 feet where 35 feet's allowed. So I'd like to get back to the main points here for the purpose of order
I understand,
of this board.
I'm just, for the record, it relates to two things. It relates to the fact that you have very small side yards, and it also relates to the fact that overall, this house is 23% bigger than the ordinance allows. So it relates in both those respects. Height, width, depth, all those things relate because of that. So that's why I'm going down that road. I'm not trying to waste your time. I will move on, though. I appreciate
Okay,
that.
thank you.
Let's see if there's anything else. I'll try to shorten it.
I-
So give me a moment.
I'm not
I'll try
trying to
shorten
cut you short, sir. I just want to make sure that the 35 feet, that we've established the fact that that is not part of the variance and it's permitted.
it, but it's relevant to the discussion.
Thank you, you made that point.
You testified about the fact that it would be difficult drainage-wise if there was a garage underneath the house. You remember that? And the applicant wanted that. I know that there's a relatively new house down the block on a larger lot. Are you familiar with that? To the right might be this one, 202. I'm not sure. It might be further down. Are you familiar with the larger house down the block that has a garage underneath to accommodate parking?
I'm not familiar with that particular lot. I'm familiar that those types of scenarios do exist. Again, as an engineer, I do not recommend them and advise my client before.
Because it's difficult to control the flow of water, correct?
It's difficult to control the flow of water in a flooding condition. Obviously, you have the concerns regarding flooding. You have the difficulty of developing a driveway with such a slope to be able to exit out safely. And in this particular case, in my opinion, that driveway would have to be sloped such that you would have a very limited view coming out of your driveway, backing out into the street. So for a number of reasons, for engineering
Okay,
purposes,
but-
I disagree that that's an
I know-
appropriate design. And I know it exists.
Yeah, but it exists and it can be designed, it just costs more money, and you have, it's a lot more difficult from an engineering standpoint. Would that be correct?
And I would not recommend.
You don't recommend it, but it can be designed to take on the water. It just costs more money. You might have to put in a recharge system, for instance, of some kind.
I haven't designed them, but yes, that might be one way to deal with it.
And another way to deal with any fire issues with regard to a home, these homes that are so close to each other, would be to put in, let's say, a fire suppression system in the home. But this home does not have that, correct? As a
That's
design?
my knowledge.
But that could be done.
It could be done in any.
Okay, and is it your testimony that the floor area ratio doesn't count or does count if it's not finished in the half story?
I would have to reread the ordinance. My understanding, without checking with the ordinance, I do not believe it counts, but I could be incorrect.
But you could be incorrect on that.
Typically, the zoning officer is here and could clarify. Unfortunately, he's not.
All right, thank you. I have no other questions.
Thank you, Mr. McLean, appreciate it.
Thank you.
I don't have any further witnesses.
I guess we would open up for.
Could I just, as a point of clarification, I just would like to ask another question. Reading the ordinance, it says floor area. Floor area shall include the floor area of non-habitable attics, except that 100% of attics or top stories of a building which meets the definition of half-story as defined herein shall be included. So if it meets the definition of a half-story, then it is included in floor area per the ordinance.
If it's finished.
If it's finished. I think the beginning of that said if it's finished.
It just says shall not include the floor area of non-habitable attics,
So non-habitable would be an unfinished attic, but
Right.
it shall not be included.
except that 100% of attics or top stories of a building which meet the definition of a half-story shall be included. So if it's a half-story, it's included. That's
But
what
it's
that's.
not a half story if it's not, if it's
No.
a storage attic, an uninhabited storage attic, it's not a half
I
story.
think we're gonna have to both study this and try to figure that out. Fair enough?
Agree to disagree.
Okay, Mr. Kennedy.
So, Mr. Chairman, I believe, Mr. McGill, you've rested essentially, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and so now we know Mr. Michelini has a witness. Roberta, do you have any witnesses?
No, not
Okay.
today.
And Mr. Michelini, do you have only one witness or?
Well, I have an expert that I'd like to put on, who
Okay.
says he thinks he can do it in 10 minutes. You can't do it in 10
It's gonna be
minutes.
cut.
All right, I have two witnesses, let's just.
Okay, and just so we know, I mean, it can, you have a professional and then you have your client?
My client.
Okay.
So,
We would, I mean, as long as we're not talking about like going on until 10:30, right? If you need more than 10 minutes, I mean, we would extend slightly more.
And then Mr. McGill would have to cross, obviously.
Well, then he'd have to come back, so, I mean, at some point, we have to cut the meeting. As I said, we're over on the board here, and we're going on 4 hours now.
yeah,
Still have all the resolutions.
Right, and we still have more
So-
business that we defer.
I think we're gonna, I think it makes sense to come back. I mean, I don't wanna come back, but I think it makes sense to not start a witness who's gonna have to come back anyway, especially if you have resolutions.
Right, and I think there will be a number of board questions. It's clear that this matter will not be settled this evening, because even if we got to the board question period, that would probably take at least another half an hour.
Right.
So, I would recommend that we decide if we want to continue in any capacity or decide to break down and adjourn to an alternate date. Is there any other information tonight besides if the next order of business becomes due for the witness? seems to make sense to not be doing that, unless you chose and want to break it up and do part of it now and part of it next time.
My clients would like to proceed, because they think it's gonna be done quickly. What's your hard stop time? I know you said 10, but
We try to keep to 10 o'clock, that's what most boards do. We would go a little bit over if you needed to, but I think once you start pulling on that thread, it's hard to decide where it stops.
sure.
Right, and we have other business attention. Let's say we've got to stop at 10.
We'll come back.
Okay. That would
Thank you.
much appreciated.
Yep.
That we recognize that.
Mr. Chairman, can we ask, April, what the date, the dates are? I know we were two things on for the 15th.
Right, so December 15th is the next meeting date. I do have 3 other applications we need to get from the board. One of them would obviously like sooner rather than later. The one is fine with waiting for January.
And just so I know, is that 3 that are waiting on top of the 2 that we already have on?
Yes,
Okay. So there's already 2 on for the 15th,
right.
and then there's a queue of 3 others, and then we, okay, got it.
Sounds like a January meeting.
We have
Mr. Chair, if we could squeeze into December, because we did agree to, we were listed last meeting, and then we did agree to push off an hour, we lost an hour.
Were there commitments on December already? The 2 that we pushed from today, are they
Yes.
committed for December? And then there were, how many others committed?
That was it.
None?
I haven't committed to anyone else yet.
Okay. I would think that would,
Mr. Chairman, I mean, we had a standing policy for a while, and I think we've gone away from it, but when we get these last-minute cancellations, we require them to wait a month.
get to the back of the queue,
And they
right?
had to get back to the queue, and we've gone away from that, and I think.
Unless it was us or through our own.
I think it's only fair if we finish an application that was here
Yes.
before we
Yes,
honor them
I
canceling.
think you would agree that you'd like to come back in December, correct?
Yes, I think
Okay,
both
is
Mr.
December
McGill and I
15th
agree on
date?
that.
Yes.
Okay, are you free, are you able to come back December 15th?
What's the date?
15th,
We'll make it happen.
okay.
Are you available?
Sometimes people are traveling, so, okay, yes, I think we need to get you on.
So, Mr. Chairman, just for the record, we are going to carry this meeting, this application to December 15th, 2022 at 6 o'clock p.m. without the need for any further public notice. So if you're here tonight, you're not going to get another notice. So this is your notice. Mr. McGill, do you, on behalf of your client, consent to extend the time frame within which the board has to act?
Yes, and I'll just add that the next meeting's going to be in June.
Yes. And April, I guess we should, in case we do need and want a full complement of 7, and Mr. Chairman, as you indicated, December sometimes gets to be a dicey month. Perhaps you should send the tapes to the alternates, just in case, so that if there is someone not present, we have that. All right, so we'll make a motion, Mr. Chair, if that's acceptable, to carry this application to December 15th, 2022, 6 o'clock p.m. without the need for any further public notice.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
April, do you want the boards to stay with you?
Yes.
Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, no, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very interesting and excellent question. That's me, Mary, thank you.
Yep.
Keep knocking it down.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm pulling up on my cell phone.
How are you doing, Mr. Kennedy?
Good.
You'll knock on the board.
I can do it in 2 minutes.
Dictionary for the family vacation.
I have a motion to
Ocean LLC, 408 Ocean Avenue, that was the combination of the restaurants. And I sent the resolution out, and if it's acceptable, we can adopt it, subject to some technical review from the zoning office and the other attorney. And the conditions of note included the consolidation of the lot. They have to comply with the maximum occupancy regulations. The only reason I put that in, they gave some testimony as to what they were, and I just would like to say, just because they said it doesn't mean it's what it is. It's gotta be whatever the town building and construction code. And we're gonna have the plans revised, but there's a bunch of things, but real briefly. The rear yard parking area shall be installed with a, so I think the word is now, pervious paver system. That's the phrase that we use.
Good night.
Unnecessarily technical.
But, right. Confirmation that the 2 existing non-conforming sheds shall be removed. The masonry trash enclosure shall be modified for the terms of the board engineer's review memorandum, which I think that was done. Confirmation that the zoning compliant trash enclosure shall be installed at the site with masonry block material. The utility pole should be removed and replaced with underground utility service. Existing overhead wires at the site removed. Private garbage, landscaping and buffering placed at the site, including arborvitae, and that shall be placed on the property from west to east and along the southern property line adjacent to the condominium complex. They had to, I think they had on their plans oil and linen storage. No, it should say oil and linen storage. I think it said oil and trash, and we wanted that changed. No interference with the site triangle easement, compliant EV parking spaces, utility meters at the site to be consolidated, and the existing baluster shall continue to be located at a minimum of 6 inches off the property line in accordance with prevailing ordinances. They worked with the board engineer to confirm that the sidewalks at the site shall be replaced and repaired as necessary. The board knows that there's an existing temporary COVID-19 authorized tent at the site, and we're not approving it or endorsing it. That tent can continue to exist as long as the COVID restrictions allow it, but that's not part of our approval. The applicant's representative utilized good faith efforts to meet with the neighbors of the 407 Ocean Avenue complex so as to attempt to review and discuss the proposal in areas of common concern. This is a continuing obligation, but this is not a reason to deny resolution compliance. And I always say this about the liquor license approvals. We don't have any jurisdiction over that, and so if they need any approval from the state, ABC, or the borough, they have to get that. I think that was it, Mr. Chairman. So,
Okay, just one clarification.
Yes,
the combining of the 2 properties into one.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that whatever process is involved there, that somebody takes the obligation of that. And then,
yes.
you know, April, I don't think it's our concern, but the town might want to look at the tax implication of that, where net, if there's taxes being charged on 2 properties, when it combines into one,
Yes.
do the taxes just become A plus B and that's the new tax bill, or when they combine, does
Well, the tax assessor, when he gets the deeds from the county, will make the adjustments on the value of the property
right,
and
okay,
how that, and then
Okay.
all the improvements that are being done will
right,
weigh in on all
and that
that too.
process will kick into gear by what mechanism?
When he gets the deed from the county, he
Okay,
updates
so
it,
just
and then it
making
gets
sure
updated
that the
again.
resolution
Absolutely.
puts the obligation on them
Yes.
to take care of all that's involved relative
Yes.
to merging of 2 separate properties.
Yes, and I should have said, it's the applicant shall arrange for the 2 lots, block 40, lot 1, and lot 17 to be consolidated. The newly designated lot designation shall be reviewed and approved by the municipal tax assessor. So even to begin with, I need the assessor to say, hey, yeah, you can call this lot 1.1 or 5.1.
Rename all of it, right?
And then
Okay.
the deed will be reviewed and approved by the board attorney and the borough engineer, and then after it's approved, it gets recorded, and they have to get approved for recording to Ted
Yep.
before they can even sign off.
Sounds good.
Kevin, did we put anything, or is it necessary to have with the parking? Because I know they had talked about there are some electric spots, but they're going up
Yes.
from 18 or 19 spots altogether. That was going to be the total parking. That was.
I did say that they shall comply with the prevailing regulations regarding the EV parking standards. And then in terms of, now remember, they needed a rather large
Yes.
parking variance. And so I think we technically, or I think we actually, the borough engineer called it a parking exception, but technically it was 124 spaces for the restaurant, where they were providing 18 spaces total. If maybe I'll correct that, but yeah, so we do have it in there that they do need the parking variance.
And they, in addition, they testified that there was going to be, I think, 4 or 6 spots that were gonna be allotted to the tenants?
Yes, actually 12.
12?
And I think we went to town on that saying, actually, we wrote, I go over my 2 minutes because my friend asked me a question, but one of the points that we made was, right now, the site does not have a lot of parking spaces, and it's going to have 6 apartments now, and it's still gonna have, and they're gonna have, that residential aspects need 12 parking spaces, and they're gonna have 12 dedicated, they're gonna have 18 total, with 12 dedicated for the residential units. And one of the findings we said is that's important, because if if you wanna go eat there and dinner and you can't get a parking spot and you're ticked off, you just go somewhere else. But someone who lives there doesn't have that site, so that's a big benefit. That is a condition that we have it restricted, dedicated for the
Okay, I just
spots.
didn't remember hearing it. I
Good.
just wanted to- Thank you.
So if that's acceptable, we can adopt that, subject to engineering review and zoning review.
I have a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Okay, Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Zelovich?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mr. Longo?
After the stand.
Ms. Dees?
Yes.
Mr. Almeida?
Yes.
All right, and the last one, Mr. Chairman, is Joseph Byrne. This is 1303.5 H Street, and this was the use variance to reconstruct the rear dwelling unit at the site. Remember, that was the fire.
House was on fire.
And we did say in here that we, as a board, individually and collectively, express sympathies for anyone who's affected by that. And basically, the gist of it, and I think Mr. Ross, you sort of said it, hit the nail on the head when he said this replacement home is very similar in size and location and size to what was previously there, but for the fact that we increased those very non-conforming side yard setbacks. And the only conditions of note included window replacement shall comply with all the prevailing construction code requirements. I said again tonight, remember, if you're less than 5 feet, you can't have certain windows on a facade. There should be no expansion of the main home or the second dwelling unit at the site, absent further formal approval of the zoning board. That second dwelling unit is going to have fire-rated walls due to the fact that there is less than a 5-foot setback. Air conditioning condensers placed in a zoning compliant location. And I think this was the other one, the applicant shall arrange for a general cleanup of the site, removal of the fire-related debris, etc., and the said cleanup shall be completed within 120 days of the adoption of the resolution. So, and the other attorney agreed and said he agreed to all that. That's acceptable to you all.
Mr. Kennedy?
Okay, can we have a motion to adopt that resolution?
I'll make that motion. Second.
Okay, Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Zelovich?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mr. Longo?
Yes.
Ms. Dees?
Abstain.
Mr. Almeida?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy, is there anything else?
That was it.
Before we adjourn for the night, we're still in public session, but I did want to address the board for a moment, if I could. When it comes to things like this evening, I want to make sure that you guys know that if you wanted to go later tonight, I'm open to that. Just let me know. We'll put it up to a board vote. I do not want to be heavy-handed here. If there's ever anything where I'm proceeding in a way that you feel you don't agree with and we want to put it up to a vote, I'll back down. But I'm trying to run these meetings as efficiently and quickly as we can so we could get more applications done. And sometimes I think these attorneys go down roads that are basically just wasting our time or are repeating themselves redundantly. And I know sometimes I might be coming across a little strong with them, but I think it's necessary because, again, we're all volunteers, we all have families to get home to, and we just can't let these things go on forever.
And most, just for the record, just because I do a lot of some of the boards, most do stop around 10, but most don't start as early as 6. So I think you guys,
Right.
You put.
Right, we're over and above. And then, just as an example, one of the attorneys previously, when we get into, couldn't you get by with 18 spots? Couldn't you get by with 16 spots?
Yes.
He's counting down, oh wait, couldn't you get by with 4 spots? It's ridiculous. And at some point, you just gotta say, cut it, and let's, quit wasting our time. So, but if ever I'm overstepping or you guys wanna bring me back down, by all means, let me know, because I know sometimes I'm coming on a little hard with these guys, but I just don't want, I'm respectful of all your time. So again, like tonight, if you wanted to go longer, all you had to do, I'm willing to put up to a vote.
For the record, I'm not willing to go past 1
You
o'clock.
wouldn't finish though.
No.
You wouldn't be able to finish. The other applications are not gonna.
Like I said, you're pulling on a string, no matter how much you give.
Absolutely.
It would keep going and going, and at some point, you gotta call it.
It was not gonna end tonight.
No, no matter what.
There's no way.
I have an hour's worth of questions, just myself, so.
All right.
Dave, good. You
I'd
go
like to
first.
make a motion, we're done, right? Nothing else here?
Motion to adjourn.
I'd like to make a.
I'll second.